Hello friends. Welcome to the Saiyan What Ifs. How are you all? So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Goku led a Saiyan rebellion. So be sure to subscribe and like this video. Now let's begin. Chapter 1. Seeds of Defiance. The crimson sky of planet Rykos burned with the same intensity as the fires raging across its surface. Kakarot stood atop a shattered spire. His Saiyan armor splattered with purple blood not his own, surveying the devastation his three-man squad had wrought upon the once thriving metropolis. Wind whipped his unruly black hair as he watched the planet's twin suns sink below the horizon, casting long shadows across the broken landscape. Unlike most Saiyans, he took no pleasure in this. Admiring your handiwork, Kakarot. Toma's gruff voice cut through his contemplation. The older Saiyan landed beside him, his battle-worn face split by a triumphant grin. Not bad for a day's work. These Rykos Ians put up more of a fight than expected. Kakarot, known only to himself by the Earth name he'd never received, Goku, turned to his comrade with carefully concealed distaste. They were defending their home. And now it's space dust. Toma laughed, clapping him on the shoulder. Lord Frieza will be pleased. Prime real estate, this planet, good atmosphere, decent resources. The remaining populati should fetch a good price on the slave markets. Kakarot's fists clenched involuntarily. Remaining population. The mission parameters were clear. Eliminate military resistance only. Toma's expression darkened. Orders changed mid-mission. Direct from Frieza himself. Total purge now. He studied Kakarot's face suspiciously. Problem with that? No. Kakarot lied smoothly. Years of practice. Hiding his true nature evident in his neutral tone. Just would have been more efficient to know from the beginning. The older Saiyan seemed satisfied with this answer. Well, Fasha's already started on the eastern continent. I'm heading north. You take the southern peninsula, supposed to be mostly civilians. He smirked. Should be easy pickings. I'll handle it, Kakarot replied, his voice betraying nothing of the turmoil beneath. As Toma blasted off in a flare of white energy, Kakarot waited several moments, ensuring his squadmate was truly gone before activating his scouter. The device whirred to life, displaying power levels across the southern landmass, thousands of them, all terrifyingly small. Civilians, families, children. His mind flashed to memories of his father, Bardock, teaching him the Saiyan way. We are warriors, Kakarot. The strongest race in the universe. But even the strongest can be enslaved, remember that. His father had always been different, harder, more pragmatic than most Saiyans. But with a strange, almost imperceptible softness toward his youngest son. Kakarot made his decision. He rocketed toward the southern peninsula, Ki trailing behind him like a comet. His scouter led him to a massive cave system where the Rykosian civilians had taken refuge. Landing at the entrance, he sensed their fear, hundreds huddled in darkness, whispering prayers to gods who had abandoned them. A brave few met him at the cave mouth, elderly warriors armed with primitive weapons, standing between him and their people. Saiyan, the leader spat, his four arms each clutching a different blade. His skin, normally the gentle blue of a morning sky, was pale with fear. You'll slaughter us like the others, but we won't make it easy. Kakarot surveyed them calmly. Why Scouter shows over 800 of your people in these caves? And you'll have to go through us to reach them, another warrior growled, mandibles clicking in defiance. No, Kakarot said simply, I won't. He reached up and switched off his scouter, then crushed it in his palm. The Rykosians stared in confusion as he dropped the broken pieces. My teammates are purging the other continents. You have perhaps 3 hours before they come looking for me. Kakarot pointed eastward. There's a forest valley 20 kilometers that way with extensive underground river systems. The minerals will mask your energy signatures. Take your people there and remain hidden. The leader lowered his weapons slightly, compound eyes blinking in disbelief. Why would you help us? Kakarot's expression remained impassive. I'll destroy this cave once you've evacuated. The evidence will suggest you were inside. You didn't answer my question, the Rykosian pressed. For a moment, something genuine flickered across Kakarot's face, a glimpse of the person beneath the warrior facade. Because this isn't right. Now go, quickly. I can't be seen helping you. As the Rykosians mobilized with desperate efficiency, Kakarot stood guard. Senses extended to their limits, alert for any approach. When the last refugee had disappeared into the forest, he unleashed a controlled barrage of energy blasts, collapsing the cave system in a spectacular display of destruction. Flying high above the ruined landscape, he fired massive ki blasts randomly across the empty peninsula, creating the impression of a thorough purge. The deception complete, he allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. It wasn't the first time he'd secretly spared lives during a mission, but never on this scale. Kakarot knew the risk he was taking. If discovered, the punishment would be severe, perhaps fatal. Yet with each life spared, the burden on his conscience lightened, if only slightly. His scouter gone, he navigated, aided by memory back to the rendezvous point, mind already constructing the report he would deliver. Another successful purge, another world conquered for Frieza's empire, another mask worn perfectly in place. But beneath it all, something was changing, a quiet rebellion taking root in his heart. Planet Vegeta's harsh red sun beat down mercilessly on the training grounds as Kakarot moved through complex combat forms. Sweat poured down his bare torso, his muscled body testament to years of relentless conditioning. Unlike many Saiyans who relied primarily on brute strength and basic techniques, Kakarot had developed a fighting style uniquely his own, fluid, adaptive, drawing from observations of countless martial traditions across dozens of worlds. Impressive, came a voice from behind him. Though your left guard still drops when you transition to aerial maneuvers. Kakarot turned to find his father watching from the shadows of a nearby overhang. Bardock wore his standard battle armor, scarred face impassive but eyes alert with the calculating intelligence that had kept him alive through countless battles. "Father," Kakarot acknowledged with a respectful nod. "I didn't sense your approach." Bardock stepped forward, his movements measured and precise. At first glance, they looked strikingly similar, the same unruly black hair, the same powerful build, but where Bardock's face was hardened by decades of warfare, something softer lingered in Kakarot's eyes. "The mission to Raikou," Bardock said without preamble. "Tell me about it." Kakarot's heart rate quickened infinitesimally, though his expression remained neutral. "Standard purge operation. The locals had limited defensive capabilities. We completed the mission with minimal difficulty." Bardock circled his son slowly. "Interesting, then, that Frieza's acquisition teams reported finding a significant group of survivors hidden in a valley. Almost 1,000 Raikousians." Ice formed in Kakarot's veins, though he didn't flinch. "Survivors. That's unexpected." "Indeed." Bardock stopped directly in front of him. "Particularly since the survivors were found in your assigned sector." The moment stretched between them, taut with unspoken accusations. Kakarot met his father's gaze steadily, prepared for the worst. Bardock glanced around to ensure they were truly alone before speaking again, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Your scouter data shows you eliminated the entire southern peninsula population. Very thorough. Of course, that data ended rather abruptly when your scouter apparently malfunctioned." "Equipment failure," Kakarot said. "I completed the mission visually." "Did you?" Bardock's expression remained unreadable. "The survivors claim a Saiyan warrior directed them to safety. Destroyed his own scouter to avoid detection." Kakarot remained silent, mind racing through possible explanations, escape routes, contingencies. If Bardock reported this, even his growing reputation as an exceptional warrior wouldn't save him from execution. Bardock stepped closer. "What I find most curious, son, is that this isn't the first such incident associated with your missions. There's a pattern emerging, faint, but discernible to those paying attention. And are you reporting these observations, father?" Kakarot asked quietly. To his surprise, Bardock's stern expression softened fractionally. "Walk with me." They left the training grounds together, moving toward the outskirts of the capital city where fewer ears might overhear. The landscape of planet Vegeta stretched around them, rugged, unforgiving terrain dotted with angular buildings of advanced design, a testament to technologies appropriated from the Tuffles after their genocide. "Last night," Bardock said suddenly, "I had a dream. More vivid than any I've experienced before." His voice held an unusual quality Kakarot had never heard. "I saw planet Vegeta exploding. Our people screaming. And Frieza." He paused, jaw tightening. "Frieza laughing as he destroyed our world with a single attack." Kakarot frowned. "A dream, father." That's unlike you. It was more than a dream. Bardock's and unconsciously touched the red headband he always wore. It felt like a vision. A glimpse of what's to come. You believe Frieza plans to destroy us. The idea wasn't entirely surprising to Kakarot, who had long harbored suspicions about the tyrant's ultimate intentions. Why would he eliminate his most effective warriors? Fear. Bardock's response was immediate. The legend of the Super Saiyan haunts him. And our strength grows with each battle, each near-death recovery. He sees the writing on the wall. It's only a matter of time before we surpass him. They stopped atop a rocky OUT cropping overlooking the sprawling Saiyan capital. In the distance, ships departed and arrived continuously, warriors returning from missions, others departing to conquer new worlds. A society built entirely on conquest. Your compassion, Bardock said finally, is seen as weakness among our people. It could get you killed. His eyes narrowed. But perhaps it's not weakness at all. Perhaps it's something else entirely. Kakarot studied his father, uncertain where this conversation was leading. What do you mean? Our people follow strength, Kakarot. They respect power above all else. But have been led down a path of subservience, glorified slaves to Frieza's empire. Bardock turned to face his son fully. If someone were to show them another way, a leader with both the strength to calm respect and the vision to see beyond endless conquest, they might follow. You're speaking of rebellion, Kakarot said, the word both exhilarating and terrifying. Against Frieza. I'm speaking of survival. Bardock's gaze turned skyward. If my vision holds truth, we face extinction. And a warrior who cannot protect his own people is no warrior at all. The implication hung heavy between them. For years, Kakarot had hidden his true nature, believing himself alone in questioning the Saiyan way. Now, it seemed his own father harbored similar doubts. This conversation never happened, Bardock said finally. Continue your missions as assigned. But perhaps keep an eye out for others who might share your equipment malfunctions. He placed a hand on Kakarot's shoulder. You're stronger than you know, son. Not just in body. As Bardock walked away, Kakarot remained on the outcropping, mind reeling with possibilities. For the first time, the vague discomfort he'd felt all his life had a potential direction, a purpose beyond mere survival. He looked down at his hands, calloused from countless battles, stained with the blood of innumerable victims. Could these same hands build something rather than destroy? Could a warrior raised for conquest become a leader of rebellion? The seed his father had planted took root, and Kakarot began to wonder. The assignment came cycles later, a joint operation with an elite Saiyan squad to subjugate planet Daikon, a world known for its warrior culture and valuable mineral deposits. Frieza wanted it intact, with minimal to infrastructure and mining operations, which meant precision rather than the usual overwhelming force. Kakarot boarded the attack pod with mixed feelings. The mission parameters specified capture rather than killing the planet's defenders, which aligned with his personal code, but it also meant working alongside elite warriors who would be watching his every move. His pod joined 5 others in formation, blasting from planet Vegeta's orbit toward their distant target. As the stasis effect took hold for the long journey, his last conscious thought was of his father's vision, planet Vegeta exploding in a ball of fire. He awoke as the pod entered Daikon's atmosphere, systems automatically bringing him back to full consciousness. The planet loomed large in his viewport, a world of jagged mountains and deep valleys shrouded in perpetual mist. According to intelligence, its inhabitants had developed a civilization that perfectly integrated with this challenging environment, building magnificent cities within the mountainsides themselves. Cities that would soon belong to Frieza. The pods crashed down in precise formation at the coordinates of their rendezvous point, a plateau overlooking the planet's capital city. Kakarot emerged from his transport to find the elite squad already assembled, led by a warrior whose reputation preceded her. Sairupa stood slightly apart from her 3 male companions, her slender but muscular form accentuated by custom battle armor that left her midriff exposed. Unlike most female Saiyans, she wore her black hair short, practical for combat, with a single red band holding back her bangs. Her dark eyes assessed Kakarot coldly as he approached. "So you're Bardock's boy," she said, voice carrying the distinctive accent of the northern continent. "I expected someone larger. One of her subordinates snickered, a hulking Saiyan with a shaved head. Heard he's clever though, uses tricks instead of proper Saiyan strength. Kakarot ignored the provocation, addressing Sarapa directly. I was told this mission requires precision. My tricks might be useful for that. A hint of amusement flickered across Sarapa's face. We'll see. I'm leading this operation. You follow my orders without question. Clear. Perfectly. Sarapa activated a holographic display showing the mountain city before them. The Daikonites have concentrated IR defenses around these 3 access points. Red markers appeared on the map. Their warriors use a form of energy manipulation similar to our ki, but more limited. Their strength is in their coordination and knowledge of the terrain. She pointed to Kakarot. You'll accompany me to the central approach. Nyan, Korn, and Cress will take the southern entrance. Our objective is to reach the Rulin G Council and force their surrender while minimizing structural damage. And if they don't surrender? Asked Korn, a thin-faced warrior with cruel eyes. Then we make examples until they reconsider, Sarapa replied flatly. But remember Frieza's orders, the mining infrastructure remains intact, or we all answer for it. She deactivated the display. Move out. They took to the air, splitting into 2 groups as planned. Flying alongside Sarapa toward the central city, Kakarot studied her from the corner of his eye. Unlike her brutish companions, she moved with precision and economy, no wasted energy or unnecessary flourish. Her power level, according to his scouter, was impressive, significantly higher than his own. Stop analyzing me, she said without looking his way. It's distracting. Sorry, Kakarot replied. Force of habit. Save it for the Daikonites. We'll be in sensor range soon. She glanced at him briefly. Bardock is a capable warrior. One of the few lower-class Saiyans worth respecting. I'm curious to see if his son deserves the same consideration. Before Kakarot could respond, his scouter beeped a warning. Energy signatures approaching. Fast. Sarapa smiled thinly. Seems they've sent a welcoming committee. From the mist below emerged a squadron of Daikonite warriors riding what appeared to be living mounts, serpentine creatures that swam through air as if it were water. The riders wore crystalline armor that refracted light in dazzling patterns, each wielding a staff that hummed with energy. Surrender your weapons and turn back, called their leader, voice amplified somehow through his helmet. Planet Daikon is sovereign territory. Planet Daikon, Sarapa called back, now belongs to Lord Frieza. Surrender your world or face extinction. The Daikonite leader raised his staff. So be it. What followed was chaos. The serpent riders attacked in perfect formation, their staffs firing concentrated beams of energy that, while not particularly powerful individually, created a deadly crossfire pattern almost impossible to evade completely. Kakarot and Sarapa separated instinctively, each taking a different approach to the battle. Sarapa went on the offensive immediately, her hands glowing with purple ki as she blasted through the formation, taking down riders with brutal efficiency. Kakarot, observing the pattern of their attacks, took a more strategic approach. He allowed several beams to pass near him, analyzing their composition and frequency, before suddenly accelerating directly into the formation. Rather than attacking immediately, he used his superior speed to disrupt their carefully coordinated assault, causing several beams to hit fellow riders instead of their targets. What are you doing? Sarapa shouted as she dispatched another warrior with a savage blow. Stop playing and finish them. Kakarot ignored her, continuing his disruptive pattern until the formation had completely broken down. Only then did he strike, targeting the connection points between riders and mounts rather than the warriors themselves. Within moments, half the squadron was plummeting toward the misty depths below, separated from their serpent companions. We can complete the mission without killing them all, he called to Sarapa as he disabled another rider. They're no threat without their mounts. Sarapa finished the last warrior in her vicinity with a key blast that disintegrated both rider and mount. Efficiency is completing the mission permanently, she responded coldly. No survivors means no resistance later. The skirmish ended quickly, with most of Kakarot's opponents descending to the safety of the valleys below while Sarapa's lay scattered through the mist, broken and lifeless. They regrouped mid-air, Sari eyeing him with a mixture of irritation and curiosity. You're skilled, she admitted reluctantly. But hesitant. That's dangerous. I completed my objective without taking a single hit, Kakarot pointed out. How is that hesitance? Because you let enemies live who will return better prepared next time. Or who will spread word of their defeat, weakening morale throughout their forces. Sarapa considered this, then shrugged. Perhaps. But I question your methods. They continued toward the central city, now clearly visible through breaks in the mist, a marvel of engineering built directly into the largest mountain. With spiraling terraces and crystalline spires that captured and redirected the limited sunlight. Under different circumstances, Kakarot might have admired its beauty. Now, he simply calculated the best approach to minimize damage. His scouter beeped again. Much larger force ahead. They've consolidated their defenses at the main entrance. Sarapa checked her own readings and frowned. More than expected. Good. A predatory smile crossed her face. I was worried this would be too easy. She activated her comm link. Nyan, status report. Heavy resistance at the southern entrance. Came the reply, punctuated by the sound of energy blasts. These insects are better organized than we thought. We're making progress, but slowly. Understood. Continue the assault. She turned to Kakarot. Change of plans. You create a diversion at the main entrance while I infiltrate through this access point. She indicated a smaller opening higher on the mountain face. Intelligence suggests it leads directly to the council chambers. Kakarot frowned. That's not what we agreed. The mission parameters. The parameters are to secure surrender quickly with minimal infrastructure damage. Sarapa cut him off. This achieves both. Unless you don't think you can handle the diversion alone. It was a challenge, clearly, but also an opportunity. Alone, Kakarot could control how he engaged the Daikonite forces, potentially limiting casualties while still appearing to follow orders. I can handle it, he said confidently. Give me 3 minutes before you enter. I'll draw their attention completely. Sarapa studied him for a moment, then nodded. 3 minutes. Make it count. As she disappeared into the mist, circling toward the secondary entrance, Kakarot took a deep breath and focused his energy. What he was about to attempt was risky, a technique he developed in secret, inspired by observing different combat styles across dozens of worlds. He rocketed toward the main entrance at full speed, allowing his energy to flare visibly, a bright beacon guaranteed to draw attention. As expected, defensive fire immediately concentrated on his position. Beams of crystalline energy converging from multiple emplacements. Instead of evading, Kakarot suddenly split his key projection into 4 separate signatures while suppressing his actual physical presence, creating the illusion of 4 attackers approaching from different angles. It wasn't true duplication, merely an energy manipulation technique that fooled both visual observation and scouters temporarily. The defenders, faced with what appeared to be multiple Saiyan warriors, divided their fire in confusion. Kakarot used this opportunity to slip through their perimeter, landing inside the entrance hall before they realized their mistake. Inside, he faced approximately 30 Daikonite warriors in formation, their crystalline armor gleaming in the ambient light filtering through the translucent mountain stone. Behind them stood what appeared to be civilians, administrators, perhaps, or technical personnel essential to the city's operation. Defenders of Daikon, Kakarot projected his voice with key enhancement, allowing it to resonate throughout the vast chamber. Your world now belongs to Lord Frieza. Surrender is your only option for survival. Their leader stepped forward, a tall, dignified figure whose armor bore additional embellishments signifying rank. We will never surrender to tyrants. Daikon has remained free for 10,000 years. We will not fall today. Yo, you've never faced the Saiyan elite before, Kakarot replied. Your defenses are already breached. Even now, my teammates approach your council chambers from multiple access points. He could see uncertainty flicker across some faces. But the commander remained resolute. Then we die with honor. Begin the convergence. The warriors arranged themselves in a precise geometric pattern, their staffs connecting to form a lattice of energy. Kakarot's scouter warned of rapidly increasing power levels as their individual energies synchronized into a combined force. 3 minutes had nearly elapsed. Arapa would be entering the council chambers soon, expecting the defenders to be fully engaged with him. He needed to act quickly, but the technique the Daikonites were employing fascinated him. He'd ever seen disparate energy signatures harmonize so effectively. Making a split-second decision, Kakarot charged forward, not toward the warriors but toward the ceiling above them. With precisely calibrated force, he struck the crystalline structure, causing a controlled collapse that separated the warriors without harming them, disrupting their formation before their combined attack could materialize. In the confusion that followed, he moved with blinding speed, disarming and disabling defenders with strikes to pressure points rather than lethal blows. Within 30 seconds, 20 warriors lay unconscious while the remainder struggled to regroup. "Your technique is impressive," Kakarot told the commander, who stood his ground despite the defeat of his forces. "But it requires perfect positioning. Against a faster opponent, it's vulnerable. Kill me and be done with it, Saiyan," the commander spat. "I won't beg. I'm not here to kill you," Kakarot replied, lowering his voice so only the commander could hear. "I'm here to end this conflict with minimal casualties. Your people are skilled builders and engineers, qualities Frieza values. Surrender now, accept his rule, and your people will survive." Confusion crossed the commander's face. "You speak as if there's a choice." "There is always a choice," Kakarot said quietly. "Sometimes survival itself is resistance." Before the commander could respond, an explosion rocked the mountain city. Kakarot's scouter indicated it came from the direction of the council chambers, where Sarapa should be negotiating surrender, not causing destruction. "What's happening?" the commander demanded. "Stay here," Kakarot ordered, securing the remaining conscious defenders with energy bonds. "Keep your people calm and await further instructions." He raced through the twisting corridors toward the source of the explosion, following the architectural flow of the mountain city with ease. The design was intuitive, harmonious, with the natural formation, another sign of the Daikonites' sophisticated culture. He arrived at the council chambers to find a scene of carnage. The once beautiful hall, with its vaulted ceiling of translucent stone, was partially collapsed. Bodies of Daikonite councilors lay scattered across the floor, many still in their seats around a massive crystalline table now shattered into countless fragments. Sarapa stood in the center, her armor splattered with blue-green blood, holding the head of what appeared to be the Daikonite leader by its cranial tentacles. She turned as Kakarot entered, a look of satisfied triumph on her face. "Perfect timing," she said casually. "The negotiations were unsuccessful." Kakarot stared at the destruction in disbelief. "What have you done?" "The mission was to secure surrender, not massacre their leadership. They refused to surrender." She tossed the severed head aside with casual disdain. "So I provided the proper motivation for their successors. The secondary leaders are being rounded up now. They'll be significantly more cooperative after seeing this example." "This was unnecessary," Kakarot said, struggling to contain his anger. "I had their defense force neutralized. We could have negotiated properly." Sarapa's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Careful, lower class. You're bordering on insubordination." She stepped closer, her power level flaring subtly in warning. "I made a tactical decision as mission commander. The result is the same. Planet Daikon will submit to Frieza's rule." "At what cost?" Kakarot gestured to the slaughtered council. "These weren't warriors. They posed no threat. All resistance threatens Frieza's empire," she replied coldly. "You'd do well to remember that." Their standoff was interrupted by Sarapa's communicator. She maintained eye contact with Kakarot as she answered. "Report. Southern entrance secured," came Nyan's voice. "The defenders surrendered when they heard their council had been eliminated. We're rounding up their technical specialists as ordered." "Excellent. Prepare them for transport. Lord Frieza will want their engineers and scientists intact." She cut the communication and smiled thinly at Kakarot. "You see, efficiency." Before he could respond, a tremor ran through the mountain, strong enough to dislodge debris from the damaged ceiling. Sarapa's scouter beeped in warning. Energy buildup detected. She frowned, checking the readings. Massive, coming from the city's power core. Her expression changed to one of alarm. "They've initiated a self-destruct sequence." Kakarot's mind raced. The commander, he must have had a contingency plan. "Damn these insects," Sarapa snarled. "If this city is destroyed, Frieza will have our heads." She activated her communicator again. "All units, locate and disable the power core immediately." "There's no time," Kakarot said, consulting his own scouter. "The reaction is already cascading. We have minutes at most." For the first time, he saw uncertainty in Sarapa's eyes. "We can't fail this mission." Frieza was explicit. The mining infrastructure must be preserved. Kakarot made a quick decision. I might be able to contain it. These mountains are composed of energy-conductive crystal, it's how they power their city. If we can redirect the explosion upward rather than outward. How? Sarapa demanded. I need to reach the power core. And I need you to evacuate everyone, your team, the prisoners, everyone, to a safe distance. Seeing her hesitation, he added, it's the only chance to salvage this mission. After a moment's consideration, she nodded sharply. Do it, I'll coordinate the evacuation. As she turned to leave, she paused. Don't fail, Kakarot, for both our sakes. Alone in the ruined council chamber, Kakarot quickly accessed the city's layout from a damaged terminal. The power core lay at the heart of the mountain, surrounded by a complex system of crystal conduits that distributed energy throughout the city. If his theory was correct, those same conduits could be used to channel the explosion. He raced through the city, following the main power conduits downward, deeper into the mountain. Around him, the evacuation proceeded chaotically, Saiyan warriors herding terrified Daikonites toward transport vessels, more concerned with completing their mission than the safety of their captives. The tremors intensified as he descended, the crystal walls around him beginning to glow with unstable energy. His scouter warnings became increasingly urgent, the power core was approaching critical mass. Finally, he reached the central chamber, a vast spherical cavern at the mountain's heart, where a massive crystal formation pulsed with blinding energy. Around it, desperate Daikonite engineers worked frantically at control stations, attempting to abort the overload they had initiated. Stop, Kakarot shouted over the deafening hum of energy. You'll all be killed. Evacuate now. The chief engineer, distinguished by his more elaborate armor, looked up in surprise. A Saiyan, here to witness your failure. Despite the situation, there was grim satisfaction in his voice. You'll get no mining operation from Daikon. Only ashes. There are thousands of your people still in the city, Kakarot urged. Your own people will die in this explosion. Doubt flickered across the engineer's face. Many chose to remain rather than live under Frieza's rule. A warrior's death, and those who didn't choose. The children, the ones being evacuated against their will. Kakarot moved closer, lowering his voice. There are better ways to resist than dying today. The engineer studied him with sudden intensity. You speak strangely for a Saiyan conqueror. I am not like the others, Kakarot said simply. Now, help me redirect this energy before it's too late. We can save your city and your people. Perhaps it was desperation, or perhaps something in Kakarot's manner convinced him, but the engineer nodded quickly. The primary conduits can be reconfigured to channel energy upward through the mountain peak. But the crystal matrix is already destabilizing. Someone would need to physically align the central node. Show me. The engineer pointed to the pulsating crystal core. The alignment rods need to be rotated precisely. But the energy discharge would kill anyone who approached now. Kakarot assessed the situation quickly. The core's energy signature was unlike anything he'd encountered before. Not key, exactly, but something similar enough that he might be able to interact with it. If he could synchronize his own energy with the crystal's resonance frequency. Get your people out, he told the engineer. I'll handle this. As the Daikonites fled the chamber, Kakarot approached the pulsating core. The energy emanating from it was almost tangible, waves of power that pushed against him like a physical force. Concentrating intensely, he began to modulate his own ki, adjusting its frequency to match the crystal's distinctive resonance. It was like trying to enter a spinning turbine. Timing was everything. With each step closer, the energy grew more intense, the heat more unbearable. His skin began to blister from exposure, but he pushed forward, focused entirely on the alignment mechanism at the core's center. When he finally reached it, the pain was excruciating. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat, but he forced his hands onto the alignment rods. The crystal energy surged through him immediately, a white-hot current that threatened to tear him apart from within. Gritting his teeth against the agony, Kakarot began rotating the rods, synchronizing them with the energy flow rather than fighting against it. It was like redirecting a river during a flood, working with the immense force rather than opposing it directly. As the final rod clicked into position, a new resonance pattern emerged. The chaotic energy began flowing upward, following the reconfigured conduits toward the mountain peak. The painful pressure in the chamber lessened slightly, but Kakarot knew the danger wasn't past. the core contained too much energy to be safely dispersed. Making a split-second decision, he plunged his hands directly into the crystal matrix, using his key as a conduit to accelerate the energy transfer. It was beyond painful now, beyond even his considerable tolerance, but he maintained the connection, channeling the destructive power upward. Above, the mountain peak erupted in a spectacular display, a column of pure energy shooting skyward like an artificial volcano. The controlled release prevented the catastrophic explosion that would have destroyed the entire city and surrounding region. In the chamber below, Kakarot finally collapsed, his body smoking from the energy discharge. His consciousness faded as the system stabilized around him, the crisis averted at tremendous personal cost. His last thought before darkness limed him was not of victory or self-preservation, but of the Daikonite civilians who might now survive, and of his father's words about finding another way. Kakarot awoke to the distinctive hum of a regeneration tank. The blue healing fluid surrounded him, accelerating his recovery from the severe energy burns he'd sustained. Through the curved glass, he could make out the medical bay of WH. It appeared to be a Frieza Force battlecruiser. As his vision cleared, he noticed someone watching him, Sarapa, arms crossed, expression unreadable. When she realized he was conscious, she moved to the tank controls, initiating the drain sequence. As the fluid receded and the tank opened, Kakarot stepped out unsteadily, accepting the standard medical garb a drone offered him. 3 days, Sarapa said without preamble. That's how long you've been in there. The medics weren't certain you'd survive. Kakarot flexed his hands experimentally, feeling the newly healed skin stretch uncomfortably. The city, the Daikonites, intact, mostly. The mountain peak was destroyed, but the internal structures and mining facilities survived. She studied him curiously. You redirected enough energy to destroy a continent. The scientists can't explain how you survived it. Neither can I, he admitted truthfully. Instinct, maybe. She didn't seem convinced. Well, your instinct saved the mission. Lord Frieza is pleased. The Daikonite engineers are already being put to work in his shipyards. Kakarot absorbed this information silently. At least they were alive, though slavery to Frieza was hardly a victory. And the squad, your team, returned to planet Vegeta with full commendations. A hint of something, respect, perhaps, entered her voice. I stayed to oversee your recovery and transport once you awakened. You didn't have to do that. No, she agreed. I didn't. She uncrossed her arms and moved closer. You're not what I expected, Kakarot. Is that good or bad? I haven't decided yet. Her dark eyes studied him intently. You fight differently. Think differently. I initially mistook it for weakness, but, she gestured to his healed body, results suggest otherwise. Kakarot wasn't sure how to respond to this quasi-compliment from an elite warrior. Thank you for waiting, he said finally. When do we depart? Immediately. I've been summoned back for a priority mission. And you've been specifically requested to accompany my team. She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. Rest while you can. We launch in an hour. Alone in the medical bay, Kakarot moved to a viewing port. Looking down at planet Daikon below. From this distance, it was peaceful, beautiful, the misty mountains catching the light of its sun. Only the blackened peak of the capital mountain hinted at the violence that had occurred. How many more worlds would suffer this fate? How many more peoples would be enslaved or exterminated for Frieza's empire? And how much longer could Kakarot continue to play his part in this cycle of conquest? His father's words returned to him. About finding another way, about leadership based on more than just brutality. For years, Kakarot had walked a careful line, saving what lives he could while maintaining his cover. But perhaps it was time for something more. The journey back to planet Vegeta gave him time to consider his position. Being requested for Sarapa's elite team was unexpected. Lower-class warriors rarely received such opportunities. It could provide access to higher levels of the Frieza Force, more information. Potentially even allies who might share his hidden doubts. As their attack pods approached Saiyan space, however, Kakarot's contemplation was interrupted by an emergency transmission overriding all channels. Attention all Saiyan warriors, came a panicked voice. Return to planet Vegeta immediately. Lord Frieza has ordered all Saiyans back to homeworld for special announcement. Repeat. All saw. Ian's return immediately by order of Lord Frieza. Kakarot's blood ran cold. His father's vision flashed before his eyes. Planet Vegeta exploding, their people screaming as Frieza laughed. Could it be happening now? Was this the summoning before the slaughter? His POD's communication system activated, connecting to Saiyapa's. Did you receive the transmission? He asked urgently. Yes. Her voice was tight with unusual tension. Something's wrong. This isn't standard protocol. We need to warn people, Kakarot said, thinking aloud. If Frieza is planning something. Planning what, exactly? Saiyan cut him off. Be careful what you suggest, Kakarot. He hesitated, then decided to risk it. My father had a vision of Frieza destroying Planet Vegeta. What if this recall is preparation for that? A long silence followed before Saiyan responded, her voice carefully controlled. Bardock has always had unusual instincts. But this would be genocide. Even Frieza wouldn't eliminate his most effective warriors without cause. Unless he fears us, Kakarot pressed. Unless he believes we might someday challenge him. Another pause. We're on an open channel, Kakarot. This conversation is dangerous. More dangerous than flying into a trap. If there's even a chance. Enough, she interrupted. We follow orders. We return to Planet Vegeta as commanded. Her voice lowered slightly, but perhaps, at a reduced speed. Technical difficulties with our pods. Understood. Kakarot recognized the concession for what it was, a small act of caution, perhaps even defiance. Understood. Technical difficulties it is. Quote, he adjusted his POD's velocity, reducing it to 70% of standard. Saiyan did the same. It would delay their arrival by several hours, perhaps enough time to assess the situation before committing themselves. As they approached Saiyan space, Kakarot's mind raced with possibilities. If Frieza truly planned to destroy their world, what could one warrior, or even a small group, do to prevent it? The power disparity was enormous. Yet the alternative, doing nothing, was unthinkable. His thoughts were interrupted by a priority alert from his scouter. Still synchronized with his POD's communications. An enormous power level had been detected near Planet Vegeta, far larger than any Saiyan, approaching the rumored strength of Frieza himself. Simultaneously, scattered transmissions began flooding the emergency channels, confused reports, aborted warnings, cries for assistance. Something catastrophic was happening. Saiyan, he called over their private channel. Are you receiving these transmissions? Yes, her voice was grim. It's happening, isn't it? Your father was right. Before Kakarot could respond, a new transmission cut across all channels, a planet-wide broadcast from Planet Vegeta itself. To his shock, he recognized the voice immediately. This is Bardock. His father's voice rang clear despite the static interference. Frieza has betrayed us. He plans to destroy our world. All warriors in range, return and fight. This is our last stand. The transmission abruptly cut off, replaced by chaotic background noise before dissolving into static. Kakarot's hands gripped the pod controls so tightly the material cracked beneath his fingers. Father, he whispered. Saiyapa's voice came through again, all pretense of protocol abandoned. Kakarot, we need to make a decision. Now. He closed his eyes, centering himself amidst the storm of emotions. His father was on Planet Vegeta, likely fighting a hopeless battle against Frieza's forces. Their people were being gathered for slaughter. Everything he had feared was coming to pass. Yet rushing in would only add 2 more deaths to the tally. If his father's vision was accurate, Planet Vegeta was doomed. The question now was not how to save it, but how to ensure the Saiyan race survived, and eventually avenge this betrayal. We can't win this fight, he said finally, the words bitter in his mouth. Not today. We need to change course, find a secure location, gather information and survivors. Saiyan was silent for so long Kakarot wondered if the communication had failed. When she finally spoke, her voice held a new quality, a cold fury barely contained. You're asking me to flee while our homeworld is destroyed. While our people die, I'm asking you to survive, Kakarot countered. To live for vengeance rather than die for pride. What would you prefer? A glorious death alongside our people, or the chance to make Frieza pay for this treachery someday? Another long pause. Where would we even go? Frieza controls most of the known galaxy. I know a place, Kakarot said, thinking of the remote worlds he'd secretly spared over the years, populations that might harbor Saiyan refugees out of gratitude. A system beyond Frieza's current territory. We can regroup there, find other survivors, plan our next move. As they debated, their pods continued on course toward planet Vegeta. Now visible in the distance as a small red dot against the blackness of space. Soon, they would be close enough for Frieza's forces to detect them. Decision time, Sarapa, Kakarot pressed. We have moments, not minutes. Just then, a blinding flash erupted from the direction of planet Vegeta, so bright their pod viewports automatically darkened to compensate. A massive energy wave followed, rocking their small vessels even at this distance. When the light faded and the viewports cleared, planet Vegeta was gone. Where the proud Saiyan homeworld had once orbited, only debris and dispersing energy remained, the funeral pyre of an entire civilization. No, Sarapa's whisper carried clearly through the communication channel. It's gone. All of it, gone. Kakarot stared at the emptiness where his home had been, a cold, clarifying rage crystallizing within him. In that moment, something fundamental changed, not just in his circumstances, but in his very being. The cautious, secret rebel became something else entirely, a survivor with a purpose, a leader born from genocide. Now we have no choice, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion roiling beneath. Set course for coordinates I'm sending you. We need to disappear before Frieza's ships detect us. To his mild surprise, Sarapa didn't argue further. Coordinates received, adjusting course. As their pods veered away from the graveyard of their civilization, Kakarot made a silent vow, not just to survive, but to build something from these ashes. A rebellion, an army, a future W. Here Frieza would pay for this day with interest. The seeds of defiance his father had planted had taken root in fertile ground, watered by the blood of their people. What would grow from this devastation remained to be seen. But Kakarot was certain of one thing. It would be stronger, more resilient, and more dangerous than Frieza could possibly imagine. And he, Kakarot, the Saiyan who had always been different, who had always questioned, would lead it. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Gathering Shadows. The void of space offered no comfort to the last survivors of a murdered world. For 6 days, the two attack pods hurtled through the darkness, their occupants suspended in stasis as automatic systems guided them toward coordinates known only to one. Inside his pod, Kakarot's consciousness float. In that strange half-aware state that stasis induced, not quite sleep, not quite wakefulness, his mind processing the trauma of witnessing his planet's destruction. Images flickered through his suspended awareness, his father's face, determined yet haunted by visions of doom, the crimson skies of planet Vegeta he would never see again, the blinding flash that had extinguished an entire civilization in moments. Beneath it all ran a current of cold rage, not the berserk fury typical of Saiyan warriors, but something deeper, more focused, honed to a cutting edge by grief and purpose. The pods, automated systems began revival protocols as they approached their destination. Kakarot's consciousness gradually coalesced, the fog of stasis receding as the vessel decelerated. Through the viewport, a world came into view, predominantly blue-green, swirled with white cloud formations, unremarkable except for the fact that it shouldn't exist in any Frieza Force database. Planet Rykos, the world whose people Kakarot had secretly spared. The entry was rough. These older attack pods weren't designed for stealth approaches. They blazed through the atmosphere like meteors, leaving fiery trails across the morning sky before impacting in the densely forested valley Kakarot had directed the refugees to months earlier. His pod hatch opened with a pneumatic hiss, releasing him into the humid air of Rykos. Immediately, his senses cataloged the environment. Gravity slightly lighter than planet Vegeta, oxygen content higher, the sense of unfamiliar vegetation rich in his nostrils. The forest around the impact crater was quiet, the local wildlife having fled the violent arrival. Sarapa's pod lay 20 meters away, its hatch already open. She stood beside it, her compact frame tense with alertness, dark eyes scanning the surroundings with predatory intensity. When she spotted him, her expression hardened. "Where exactly have you brought us, Kakarot?" Her voice carried the edge of someone barely containing their emotions. "This planet isn't in any charts I've studied." He approached cautiously, aware that she was processing the same grief and shock, though manifesting it differently. That's because officially, it was purged 6 months ago. By my team. Understanding flashed across her features, followed swiftly by disbelief. You falsified mission reports. That's treason against both Frieza and the Saiyan crown. The Saiyan crown no longer exists, Kakarot reminded her quietly. And Frieza has made himself our enemy. Past loyalties mean nothing now. She didn't argue the point. Instead, glancing around at the pristine forest with new comprehension. You spared them. The native population. Yes. How many other missions did you compromise? Kakarot met her gaze steadily. Enough. A complex series of emotions crossed Serapa's face. Anger, confusion, reluctant admiration, and something else he couldn't quite identify. Before she could respond, however, the forest around them came alive with movement. Dozens of figures emerged from concealed positions, surrounding the impact site with weapons trained on the Saiyans. The Raikojans had evolved considerably since Kakarot had last seen them. Their naturally blue skin was now mostly concealed beneath armor crafted from local materials, and their primitive weapons had been augmented with salvaged technology. Kelly scavenged from the ruins Kakarot's team had left behind. Their leader stepped forward, forearms gripping various weapons, compound eyes widening in recognition. You, the Raikojan said, Mandib. Less clicking in what Kakarot recognized as their version of surprise. The Saiyan who warned us. You've returned. Kakarot inclined his head slightly. My name is Kakarot. This is Serapa. We come seeking sanctuary. Sanctuary. The leader's translucent wings fluttered in agitation. Your kind brings only destruction. Why should we offer you refuge? Because our world has been destroyed, Kakarot replied simply. Our people exterminated. The same tyrant who ordered your planet's purge has betrayed us. Murmurs rippled through the assembled Raikojans. Their leader studied the two Saiyans with unblinking compound eyes. The great warriors, brought low. His mandibles clicked in what might have been satisfaction. Perhaps there is justice in the universe after all. Serapa tensed beside Kakarot, her power level fluctuating with barely suppressed anger. He placed a restraining hand on her arm. A boldness that would have been unthinkable days earlier when she outranked him, and addressed the Raikojan leader again. We don't ask for your sympathy, only temporary shelter while we determine our next steps. In return, we offer protection. Frieza believes this world dead and empty. We can help ensure it stays that way. The leader conferred briefly with others in their clicking, musical language before responding. The Council of Hives must decide this matter. You will follow us, unarmed, to the new settlement. Any aggression will be met with immediate response. His multiple eyes fixed meaningfully on Serapa. We may appear primitive to you, but we have prepared for the return of conquerors since your departure. Kakarot nodded agreement. We understand. As the Raikojans led them through the dense forest, Serapa spoke in a low voice that only Saiyan hearing could detect. This is humiliating. We could eliminate these insects with minimal effort. To what end? Kakarot countered quietly. We need allies, not more enemies. Besides, he added with grim humor, there are only 2 Saiyans left in the universe. We should probably avoid unnecessary combat. The truth of those words seemed to strike Serapa physically. Her steps faltered momentarily, her proud posture sagging under the weight of their reality. 2, she whispered, out of thousands. Everyone else, gone. Not necessarily, Kakarot said. Any Saiyans on distant missions might have survived. We need to find them before Frieza does. And then what? There was unexpected bitterness in her voice. Form a resistance with a handful of survivors against the most powerful being in the galaxy. That's not a strategy, Kakarot. That's delusion. He had no immediate answer for her. The path ahead was anything but clear, but the alternative, hiding forever, or worse, surrendering to Frieza, was unthinkable. The forest gave way to a vast underground complex, the new settlement the leader had mentioned. It was an impressive feat of engineering, especially given the short time since the purge. The Raikojans had carved a new civilization beneath the surface, utilizing both their natural building instincts and salvaged technology. Passages and chambers spread in all directions, housing thousands of survivors in a self-sufficient community never meant to see daylight again. They were led to a circular chamber where a semicircle of elder Raikojans waited. Unlike the warriors, these individual S displayed more specialized morphological features, enlarged cranial structures, elongated sensory appendages, colorations indicating advanced age and status. The Council of Hives, presumably. The S. Ion who showed mercy returns seeking refuge, their escort announced, stepping aside. The Central Elder's compound eyes studied them with unsettling intensity. I am First Scholar XYXYX. I remember the day our watchers reported your arrival with your death squad. I remember the fires that consumed our cities. And I remember the warning that saved 812 lives. His mandibles licked in a pattern Kakarot couldn't interpret. Why have you returned to a world you helped destroy? Kakarot stepped forward, deliberately lowering his power level in a show of respect. Our homeworld, RLD has been destroyed by the same tyrant who ordered your purge. We believe other survivors may seek refuge here, drawn by coordinates I've shared through secure channels. We ask temporary sanctuary, while we gather our people and resources. And then, XYXYX pressed. You gather your warriors and leave us in peace. Not exactly, Kakarot replied honestly. Frieza's empire spans much of the known galaxy. No world is truly safe while he rules. We intend to build a resistance, beginning here, if you'll allow it. Your people would be partners in this effort, not subjects. Murmurs rippled through the council. Sarapa shot Kakarot a sharp glance, clearly surprised by this forthright declaration of his intentions. The First Scholar's antennae quivered thoughtfully. Partners. Saiyans have ever partnered with those they consider inferior. You are conquerors by nature, by biology, by culture. Why should we believe one genocide changes this fundamental truth? It was a fair question, one Kakarot had anticipated. Because conquest without purpose is meaningless. My people followed Frieza out of pride and ambition, believing we would eventually rule alongside him. That delusion died with our planet. He gestured around at the underground settlement. Your people have built this in mere months. Imagine what we could accomplish together against a common enemy. The First Scholar rose from his seat, multiple limbs moving in perfect coordination as he approached Kakarot. Standing before the Saiyan, the elder was significantly shorter, yet carried himself with undeniable dignity. You speak of partnership while your companion looks upon us with the contempt of a predator for prey, he observed, glancing at Sarapa. Your words may be sincere, Kakarot, but you do not speak for all Saiyans. There are only two of us at the moment, Kakarot replied. And Sarapa is a warrior born. Judge her by her actions, not her expression. The First Scholar's compound eyes blinked in sequence. Indeed, actions. He turned to address the full council. This matter requires deeper consideration. The potential survivors mentioned might include those who participated in genocides across countless worlds. Are we to shelter the very architects of suffering throughout the galaxy? Not all Saiyans participated willingly in Frieza's campaigns, Kakarot argued, though he knew this was stretching the truth. Most Saiyans had reveled in conquest. Many, like myself, sought ways to mitigate the damage while maintaining our cover. A convenient claim, another counselor noted, her voice higher-pitched and skeptical. Unprovable now that your witnesses are cosmic dust. Sarapa surprised everyone by speaking up. I commanded an elite squad that purged dozens of worlds, she said bluntly, her dark eyes challenging. I took pride in my efficiency. I never questioned orders. Her gaze shifted to Kakarot. Until recently. The council chamber fell silent, the Raikojans clearly taken aback by this frank admission. You admit to genocide without remorse? The female counselor asked incredulously. I state facts without pretense, Sarapa countered. Would you prefer comforting lies? My homeworld is destroyed. My people are virtually extinct. For the first time in my life, I question everything I was raised to believe. She looked around the chamber with newfound intensity. You built this. She gestured at the settlement, from nothing, after surviving extinction. That commands respect. Coming from Sarapa, this was extraordinary. Kakarot glanced at her with new appreciation, recognizing the tremendous psychological shift this represented for an elite Saiyan warrior. The First Scholar's antennae quivered again. Interesting. Honesty, at least. He turned to his fellow counselors. We will deliberate. Guards, escort our guests to the waiting chamber. As they were led away, Kakarot felt cautiously optimistic. The Raikojans hadn't immediately rejected them, which was more than he might have expected given their history. Once alone in the Spartan waiting chamber, he turned to Sarapa. "Thank you," he said simply. She leaned against the rough-hewn wall, arms crossed defensively. "For what?" "Admitting I've spent my life as Frieza's executioner. For being honest. For showing them you can change." Her dark eyes flashed dangerously. "Don't misunderstand me, Kakarot. I haven't suddenly developed your soft heart. I'm pragmatic. Our situation has changed, so our tactics must change." She pushed away from the wall, pacing the small chamber restlessly. "But this partnership you proposed with inferior species, that's not change. That's desperation. It's survival," Kakarot countered. "And possibly the only path to eventual victory." "Victory," she repeated sarcastically. "Against Frieza. Have you forgotten his power? He destroyed our planet with a single attack." "I haven't forgotten anything," Kakarot replied, an edge entering his voice. "Which is why I know we can't face him directly, not yet. We need time, resources, allies. We need to understand how he was able to attain such power, and find ways to counter it." "And you think these insects have answers? Or any of the weak races you secretly spared?" Sarapa laughed bitterly. "They couldn't even defend themselves against us, let alone Frieza." "Because they fought alone," Kakarot said quietly. "Every race, every planet, isolated and overwhelmed. Frieza's strategy has always been divide and conquer. Ours must be unite and resist." Before Sarapa could respond, the amber door opened to reveal the first scholar, accompanied by 2 guards. His compound eyes regarded them impassively. "The council has reached a decision," he announced without preamble. "You may remain temporarily, under observation. Any other survivors will be evaluated individually upon arrival. Any threat to our people will be met with immediate expulsion." His antennae twitched. "We are not warriors by nature. But necessity has made us adaptable. Do not mistake biological pacifism for weakness of resolve." Kakarot bowed slightly in acknowledgement. "We understand and accept your terms." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet, Saiyan," the first scholar replied. "Sanctuary comes with conditions. You will share your knowledge of Frieza's empire, military deployments, weaknesses, communication protocols. You will assist in improving our defenses. And," his mandibles clicked with finality, "you will both undergo memory verification." "Memory what?" Sarapa asked sharply. "Verification. Our scientists have developed a method to extract and review recent memories, a defensive adaptation since your last visit. We must confirm your account of events." Kakarot tensed. Memory extraction cool. D reveal many things he preferred to keep private, including his secret sabotage of numerous missions. Yet refusing would destroy the fragile trust they'd established. "I'll submit to your procedure," he agreed cautiously. "Though I warn you, some memories may be difficult to witness." "As they should be," the first scholar replied without sympathy. "Galactic conquest leaves little room for pleasant recollections." Sarapa's expression had darkened dangerously. "You want to probe into my mind. That's where I draw the line." The first scholar's compound eyes blinked in sequence. "Then you draw the line at Sanctuary. The choice is simple." A tense silence followed as Sarapa visibly struggled with the ultimatum. Finally, she gave a curt nod. "Fine, but only recent memories relevant to our account." "Of course," the first scholar agreed. "We have no interest in the entirety of your violent history." They were led deeper into the settlement, through tunnels that grew progressively more refined in their construction, until they reached what appeared to be a scientific facility. Unlike the rough-hewn chambers above, these spaces contained sophisticated equipment, some recognizably salvaged from Saiyan technology, others of unique Raikkojan design. In the central laboratory, several Raikkojan scientists worked at various stations. They looked up as the group entered, multiple limbs pausing in their tasks. One approached, a smaller specimen with distinctly enlarged cranial features and specialized manipulator appendages. "Chief Researcher ZYX, the first scholar introduced. Our foremost neurological specialist." The scientist studied the Saiyans with obvious scientific curiosity. "Fascinating specimens. I've only examined Saiyan brain tissue post-mortem. Living subjects will provide much clearer data." "We're not here for you to study us," Sarapa growled. "Just verify our story and be done with it." "The procedure serves both purposes," ZYX replied unapologetically. "Knowledge is survival for our kind now. The memory verification process proved less invasive than Kakarot had feared. Rather than direct neural intrusion, it involved a field that resonated with brain activity, creating a three-dimensional projection of recent memories, imprecise but vivid enough to confirm their account of Planet Vegeta's destruction. Kakarot went first, the projection displaying his final moments before evacuation, Bardock's transmission, the blinding flash, the aftermath of debris where a planet had been. The assembled Raikojans watched in sobered silence as the extinction of a species played out before them. When Serapis' memories followed, showing the same events from her perspective, even the most skeptical counselors seemed convinced. The raw emotion in both memories, Kakarot's cold fury and Serapis' shocked disbelief, carried an authenticity difficult to fabricate. Verification confirmed, Chief Researcher ZYX announced, powering down the device. Their account appears accurate. Planet Vegeta has indeed been destroyed by Frieza's hand. The first scholar's antennae drooped slightly, a gesture Kakarot interpreted as solemnity. Then we face a common enemy more terrible than we realized. A being who would exterminate his own allies when they no longer serve his purpose. He fears us, Kakarot said quietly. The Saiyans, our potential for growth. That's why he eliminated us. A logical conclusion, ZYX agreed. Saiyan physiology demonstrates remarkable adaptive capabilities, especially the phenomenon you call Zenkai, gaining strength from near-death experiences. Theoretically, given sufficient time and appropriate challenges, Saiyan potential might indeed approach or exceed Frieza's capabilities. This assessment surprised Kakarot. The Raikojans had clearly studied Saiyan biology extensively, perhaps from casualties during the Purge attempt. More importantly, they'd recognized something many Saiyans themselves overlooked, their evolutionary advantage. Time, Serapis said bitterly. The one thing we don't have. Frieza controls most of the known galaxy. His forces are everywhere. Not everywhere, the first scholar corrected. His empire has borders, limitations. Worlds beyond his immediate influence where resistance might take root. You've been mapping his territories, Kakarot realized. Since our near extinction, yes. Knowledge is our primary defense. The first scholar's compound eyes fixed on Kakarot. Your sanctuary is granted, but temporary. Use it wisely. Council members will arrange your accommodations and integration protocols. He turned to leave, then paused. One question remains unanswered, Kakarot. Why did you spare us? Truly, it was the question that had haunted him for years, the contradiction at his core. Why had he, born of a warrior race, consistently sought to mitigate the violence expected of him? Because destruction without purpose seemed wasteful, he answered honestly. Your pay, Opal deserved better than extinction for Frieza's profit margins. The first scholar studied him a moment longer. An unusual perspective for a Saiyan. Perhaps that's why you survived when others did not. With that cryptic observation, he departed with his entourage, leaving the Saiyans with the scientific team. The settlement has limited space, Chief Researcher ZYX informed them. You'll be assigned quarters near this facility for now. Your physiological requirements have been noted. Increased caloric intake, specific gravity preferences. We'll accommodate where possible. As they followed the scientist through the complex, Kakarot noticed Serapis' continued silence. Her usual imperious demeanor had given way to something more introspective, almost vulnerable. The reality of their situation, refugees dependent on the mercy of those they once considered inferior, was clearly weighing on her. Their assigned quarters proved adequate if Spartan, 2 small chambers connected to a common area. Furnished with simple pallets and storage units. The lighting mimicked natural daylight cycles despite being underground, an ingenious touch that revealed the Raikojans' attention to psychological well-being. Rest, ZYX advised before departing. Your bodies show significant stress markers despite your remarkable physiology. Tomorrow, we begin integration. Alone at last, Kakarot sank onto the pallet in the common area. The physical and emotional exhaustion of the past week finally catching up to him. Serapis remained standing, her compact frame silhouetted against the artificial daylight, staring at nothing in particular. We should attempt to contact other survivors, she said finally, her voice lacking its usual edge. If any Saiyan missions were far enough from Planet Vegeta during the attack. Yes, Kakarot agreed, but carefully. Frieza will be hunting survivors. Any communication could expose this location. So we just wait. She turned to face him, frustration evident. Hide underground with these creatures while our people's ashes cool in the void. We plan, Kakarot corrected. We gather intelligence. We learn everything we can about Frieza's organization, his movements, his weaknesses. He met her gaze steadily. And yes, we wait for the right moment. Patience isn't surrender, Sarapa. She looked away, jaw tight with suppressed emotion. I wasn't raised to be patient. I was raised to conquer. We all were, he acknowledged. But now we must become something else entirely. And what would that be? Survivors, Kakarot said simply. For now, that's enough. Days stretched into weeks as they adjusted to life among the Raikojans. The underground settlement functioned with remarkable efficiency, each citizen contributing according to their abilities. Resources carefully managed, technology and tradition blended pragmatically. Kakarot found himself oddly impressed by their resilience, their ability to rebuild a civilization from the ashes of near extinction. True to his word, he shared his knowledge of Frieza's empire, deployment patterns, communication protocols, command structures. The Raikkojan intelligence analysts absorbed everything eagerly, correlating his information with data gathered from other sources to create an increasingly comprehensive picture of their common enemy. Sarapa, initially resistant to cooperation, gradually found her place as well. Her expertise in combat tactics proved valuable to the Raikkojan defense forces, who had developed their own fighting styles adapted to their unique physiology. The cultural exchange was tentative at first, then increasingly genuine as mutual respect developed. 1 month after their arrival, the first response to Kakarot's encrypted message arrived, a Batter-D attack pod containing a lower-class Saiyan warrior named Turles, who had been on a distant assignment when planet Vegeta was destroyed. His arrival brought both relief and tension. Unlike Kakarot and Sarapa, who had directly witnessed the planet's destruction, Turles initially refused to believe Frieza's betrayal until shown the memory verification. Impossible, he had whispered, watching the projected images of their world's final moments. Why would he destroy his most effective warriors? Fear, Kakarot had explained again. Of what we might become. Other survivors followed gradual. Why? 7 in total over the next 2 months, each with similar stories of distant assignments and confused returns to find their homeworld vanished. Each underwent the same verification process, each street struggled with the same disbelief and rage, and each eventually joined what was becoming a genuine resistance cell. The Raikkojan Council, initially wary of hosting additional Saiyan warriors, grew more accepting as the survivors demonstrated commitment to Kakarot's vision of partnership rather than conquest. A symbiotic relationship developed, Saiyan strength and battle experience complementing Raikkojan technological innovation and strategic thinking. For Kakarot, these developments confirmed his long-held belief that cooperation yielded greater results than domination. For most of the other Saiyans, it represented a pragmatic adjustment to radically changed circumstances. Only Sarapa seemed to truly understand the philosophical shift underlying their new alliance, a point that increasingly drew her into private conversations with Kakarot. They're adapting better than I expected, she observed one evening as they monitored communications in the settlement's intelligence center. The ILITY had become their default gathering place, away from the curious eyes of both Raikojans and fellow Saiyans. Especially the elites. 2 of the survivors had been elite warriors like herself, proud, aggressive Saiyans accustomed to command rather than cooperation. Their integration had been Kakarot's greatest concern. Saiyans are survivors at our core, he replied, scanning frequency pattern. NS for any sign of Frieza Force communications. Our pride is strong, but our instinct for adaptation is stronger. It's how we've survived as a species. Until now, she added grimly. We're not extinct yet, Kakarot reminded her. 9 survivors confirmed, possibly more still out there. He paused, considering whether to share a theory he'd been developing. And potentially others Frieza doesn't even know exist. Sarapa looked up sharply from her monitoring station. What do you mean? Over the years, I've encountered evidence of Saiyan outposts beyond Frieza's territories. Places Air small groups established themselves independently, sometimes with local populations. Her eyes narrowed. That's against every protocol. No Saiyan leaves the service of the crown without authorization. The crown is dust, Kakarot reminded her, and some left long before its destruction. Deserters, exiles, explorers who never returned. There are always those who walk their own path. And you never reported these discoveries. He met her gaze evenly. Would you have, in my position? The question hung between them, laden with implications about his long-standing quiet rebellion. After a moment, Sarapa looked away. Perhaps not, she conceded. Especially knowing what we know now about Frieza's intentions. She hesitated, then added more softly, you've been preparing for this possibility for years, haven't you? Not consciously, perhaps, but instinctively. I've questioned our path for as long as I can remember, Kakarot admitted. The endless conquest, the pointless destruction. It never made sense to me. Even as a child, my father noticed, tried to channel it in productive directions, but even he didn't fully understand. Most Saiyans would consider such thoughts weakness, Sarapa observed. Though without judgment. Most Saiyans are dead, Kakarot replied bluntly. Perhaps questioning saved me when blind loyalty doomed others. The harsh assessment hung in the air between them. Sarapa didn't argue the point, her expression thoughtful as she returned to monitoring communications. Something had changed between them in these weeks of shared exile, a respect that transcended their former positions. Perhaps even the beginnings of genuine understanding. Their quiet work was interrupted by a priority alert from the settlement's perimeter sensors. Both Saiyans tensed, immediately alert to potential danger. Unidentified spacecraft entering atmosphere, the Raikkogen technician announced, multiple limbs working control surfaces with practiced efficiency. Not Saiyan configuration, not Frieza force design either. Kakarot moved to the main display, studying the incoming vessel's profile. Origin, trajectory, unknown origin, approaching from Sector 7, following a deliberate course toward the settlement. The technician's compound eyes blinked rapidly. It appears to be responding to the encrypted signal you established. This was concerning. The signal Kakarot had created contained specific markers that only Saiyan communication systems should recognize. If another species had detected and deciphered it, defense protocols activated, another technician reported. Concealment fields at maximum. The settlement's advanced technology included systems that masked energy signatures and disrupted scanning equipment, developments born from their near-extinction experience. Still, an unknown vessel responding to their secure channel represented a significant risk. I'll intercept it, Kakarot decided. Sarapa, Coordinate Defense PR. Operations here in case this is some form of trap. She nodded sharply, already moving toward the armory section. Take Turles as backup. His power level is second only to yours among our survivors. The recommendation made tactical sense, though Kakarot suspected it was also a test of the lower-class warrior's reliability. Turles had been the most difficult survivor to integrate, his aggressive nature chafing under the cooperative framework Kakarot had established. Minutes later, Kakarot and Turles launched from a concealed exit, their key signatures suppressed to avoid detection as they approached the landing site. The unknown vessel had touched down in a clearing several kilometers from the settlement, a sleek craft of unfamiliar design, its hull bearing strange markings that resembled neither Frieza Force insignia nor any common galactic script. They observed from dense foliage as the ship's hatch opened, revealing a solitary figure. Not Saiyan, that was immediately apparent from the slender build and lack of characteristic hair. As the figure descended the ramp, more details became visible. Pale lavender skin, short stature, and what appeared to be complex technological augmentations integrated with their natural body. Tuffle, Turles hissed in surprise, his tail lashing behind him. Impossible. They were exterminated generations ago. Kakarot studied the figure with intense focus. Turles was right. The being displayed classic Tuffle characteristics, though modified significantly from historical records. The Tuffles had been the original inhabitants of planet Vegeta, a technologically advanced species exterminated by the Saiyans during their conquest of the world they'd originally called Planet Plant. Stay back, Kakarot instructed quietly. I'll approach alone. Be ready if this goes wrong. Turles clearly disliked the order but complied, positioning himself where he could intervene quickly if needed. Kakarot emerged from cover slowly, making no effort to conceal his approach. The Tuffle turned immediately, showing no surprise at his appearance. Kakarot, son of Bardock, the figure stated in a precisely modulated female voice. Your encrypted signal was well constructed, but contained identifiable markers consistent with your previous communication patterns. Kakarot stopped at a cautious distance, senses alert for any trap. You have me at a disadvantage. You know my name, but I don't know yours. Zuli, she replied simply. Former research subject 47Z, Frieza Special Scientific Division. Now independent operator following the dissolution of my research facility. Her large eyes, typical Tuffle features enhanced with visible cybernetic components, regarded him with clinical interest. My analysis indicated a 73.8% probability that you would survive Frieza's purge of Saiyan populations, given your documented pattern of independent action and strategic thinking. You knew the purge was coming, Kakarot realized, tension rippling through him. You had advanced knowledge of Frieza's plan to destroy planet Vegeta. Correct. All high-clearance scientific personnel were evacuated from Saiyan-related projects 48 hours before the event. Her expression remained neutral, almost mechanical. I chose not to return to Frieza's service after witnessing this strategic decision. You defected, Kakarot translated, studying her more carefully now. The technological components integrated with her body appeared sophisticated beyond even Frieza Force standards, lightweight, almost organic in their design. Why respond to my signal now? What do you want? Mutual benefit, Zuli replied with pragmatic directness. I possess information vital to understanding Frieza's capabilities and vulnerabilities. You are gathering Saiyan survivors with the statistically probable intention of eventually challenging Frieza's authority. Our objectives align. Turles emerged from cover, patience exhausted. A Tuffle seeking alliance with Saiyans. After we conquered your world. This must be a trap. Zuli's cybernetic eyes focused on him without emotion. Historical grievances are irrelevant when facing extinction. The Saiyan conquest occurred 241 standard years ago. I was born in Frieza's laboratories from preserved Tuffle genetic material, part of his program to exploit intellectual resources of conquered species. She turned back to Kakarot. Emotional responses to historical events are inefficient. I suggest pragmatism. Despite her clinical manner, Kakarot sensed no deception, only a ruthlessly practical mind evaluating survival options. Still, caution was warranted. If you have information about Frieza, why not sell it to his enemies? He asked. There must be others who would pay handsomely. 3 reasons, she replied without hesitation. First, Frieza's intelligence network would identify any such transaction. Second, no current power possesses sufficient military capability to effectively utilize the information against him. Third, and here's something almost like emotion flickered in her expression, my analysis of your tactical innovations and ethical anomalies suggests you represent the most statistically significant threat to Frieza's dominance within calculable timeframes. This assessment, delivered with such clinical certainty, gave Kakarot pause. That a former Frieza Force scientist, a Tuffle, no less, would identify him specifically as Frieza's most likely challenger seemed either extremely flattering or deeply suspicious. We'll need to verify your claims, he said finally. The Kajins have memory extraction technology. Acceptable, Zuli agreed immediately. Though primitive compared to Frieza's neural scanning facilities, it should suffice for basic verification purposes. Her ready acceptance of this condition suggested either honesty or exceptional confidence in her ability to manipulate the verification process. Either way, she represented both opportunity and potentially valuable intelligence on Frieza's operations, but also a complicated addition to their already tenuous alliance with the Raikojans. Follow us, Kakarot instructed, decision made. Any sudden movements or attempts to communicate externally will be considered hostile action. Understood, she replied with the same unnerving calm. Logical precautions. As they escorted the Tuffle scientist back toward the settlement, Turles leaned close to Kakarot, voice pitched low. A Tuffle and Raikojans. Next you'll be recruiting Arcojans into your little resistance movement. All root anyone who can help us survive and eventually defeat Frieza, Kakarot replied evenly. Species is irrelevant compared to capability and commitment. Turles snorted derisively. Spoken like Somio, nay who never learned proper Saiyan history. These creatures served purposes, Tuffles for their technology, which we took, and weaker races as conquest targets, nothing more. And where did that philosophy lead us? To near extinction, Kakarot countered. Perhaps it's time for a new approach. The arrival of a Tuffle scientist at the settlement caused the expected commotion among both Saiyans and Raikojans. Historical records of the Saiyan-Tuffle War were part of every Saiyan's education, with the Tuffles portrayed as physically weak but technologically advanced opponents who'd been overwhelmed by Saiyan power during a full moon transformation. For most Saiyans, they represented a conquered race rightfully eliminated. For the Raikojans, however, Zuli represented something else entirely, a scientific mind potentially on par with their best researchers, with access to advanced knowledge they desperately needed. First Scholar XYXYX personally oversaw her verification process, which confirmed her basic account of defection from Frieza's service following advanced knowledge of planet Vegeta's destruction. More intriguingly, the process revealed fragmented glimpses of the research she'd been involved with, studies of Saiyan genetic material, energy manipulation technologies, and something called the lineage factor that seemed to hold particular importance. These fragments were insufficient for complete understanding but suggested her knowledge might indeed be as valuable as she claimed. A tense council meeting followed, where Kakarot advocated for incorporating Zuli into their resistance efforts while several Saiyan survivors objected strenuously to alliance with a Tuffle. The Raikojan leadership, pragmatic as always, focused on the potential benefits rather than historical animosities. Her knowledge of Frieza's scientific operations alone justifies her inclusion, the first scholar argued. Emotional responses to ancient conflicts serve no practical purpose. Ancient, one of the elite Saiyan survivors, Celsus, protested. The conquest of Planet Plant is celebrated in our calendar. Tuffles are our historical enemies. We're your historical enemies, Zuli corrected dispassionately. Currently, I represent the entirety of Tuffle survival, making large-scale conflict between our species mathematically impossible. Frieza, conversely, represents an existential threat to all parties present. Her logical approach, while off-putting to many Saiyans, resonated with the Raikojan counselors. Ultimately, she was granted conditional status within the settlement, assigned laboratory space adjacent to Chief Researcher Zix's facility, and placed under observation until her contributions could be properly evaluated. Kakarot found himself increasingly drawn to he Tuffle scientist in the days that followed. Unlike the other survivors who focused primarily on combat training and physical preparation, Zuli offered a different perspective on their predicament, analytical, strategic, and unsentimental. Frieza's power is not merely physical, she explained during one of their information-sharing sessions in her laboratory. His organization is structured to ensure absolute control through both fear and reward. Challenging him requires understanding this structure. The laboratory she'd been assigned had rapidly transformed under her direction, salvaged equipment reconfigured into sophisticated analysis systems that far exceeded the Raikojan's previous capabilities. Holographic displays showed complex organizational charts of Frieza's empire, command structures, resource flows, communication networks. You've mapped his entire operation, Kakarot observed, studying the displays with growing appreciation for the scope of her intelligence. Approximately 68% with high confidence. She corrected, manipulating the hologram with precise gestures. These sectors remain inadequately documented due to restricted access or deliberate information compartmentalization. Her cybernetically enhanced hands moved through the display with inhuman precision, highlighting key vulnerabilities in Frieza's network. Though her emotional affect remained muted, Kakarot noticed subtle indicators of increased animation when discussing her research, a barely perceptible shift in vocal patterns, slightly accelerated movements. Your augmentations, he said, steering toward the technological components visible at her temples and along her arms. They're not standard Frieza Force designs. Correct. Self-modifications based on research I conducted but concealed from official documentation. A hint of something like pride colored her typically flat tone. Frieza's scientists focus on weaponizing biology. I focused on harmonizing technology with natural systems. You experimented on yourself, the most logical test subject. Guaranteed consent, direct neural feedback, no ethical clearance required. She adjusted something at her temple, and the cybernetic components along her arm reconfigured slightly, demonstrating their adaptability. The Tuffle approach to technology always emphasized integration rather than imposition. Frieza preferred the latter. This philosophical distinction intrigued Kakarot. Integration versus imposition. Like partnership versus conquest. Zuli glanced at him, her enhanced eyes focusing with unnerving intensity. An apt parallel. Your approach to species interaction demonstrates similar integrative principles, unusual for Saiyan psychology as documented in historical records. I've been told I'm unusual. Kakarot acknowledged with a slight smile. Statistical anomalies often presage evolutionary advancement, she replied, something almost like approval in her tone. Your cognitive patterns suggest adaptive mutation rather than aberration. Quote. Coming from her, this was apparently high praise. Before Kakarot could respond, the laboratory door opened to admit Sarapa, who paused briefly upon seeing them together before entering fully. The latest survivor has completed verification, she reported, her gaze moving between Kakarot and the Tuffle scientist with barely concealed suspicion. Parsni, A.M. id-class warrior who was on a deep space assignment when planet Vegeta was destroyed. That brings us to 10 confirmed Saiyan survivors. 10 from thousands, Kakarot noted grimly. Still, better than none. Parsni's capabilities, adequate combat skills, extensive space navigation experience, Sarapa assessed clinically. More notably, he claims to have encountered other Saiyans living independently in the Outer Rim territories, confirms your theory about unofficial outposts. This was significant news, potential allies beyond Frieza's immediate reach. Kakarot turned to Zuli. Would Frieza have records of these outposts? The Tuffle considered briefly. Unlikely. Monitoring systems focus on official deployments. Independent settlements established before modern tracking protocols would remain undocumented unless they engaged in activities that attracted attention. Then we need to debrief Parsni immediately, Kakarot decided. These outposts could provide safe havens, resources, additional fighters. Sarapa nodded in agreement, though her expression remained guarded. I've already scheduled a full debriefing. But there's something else you should know. She hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. He mentioned rumors of a Saiyan child sent to a distant planet called Earth shortly before Frieza's attack. Supposedly on orders from your father. Kakarot froze. My father sent a child off-world. Why would he do that? Presumably because of his visions, Sarapa suggested. If he truly foresaw planet Vegeta's destruction, he might have attempted to preserve bloodlines, Zuli interjected. Analytical mind immediately identifying the logical explanation. Genetic preservation is a standard protocol when extinction events are anticipated. The idea that his father might have sent another Saiyan, possibly even a relative, to safety stirred complex emotions in Kakarot. Hope, curiosity, even a touch of envy that this unknown child had been spared witnessing their world's destruction. Earth, he repeated, committing the name to memory. How far? Approximately 28,000 light-years from former planet Vegeta coordinates, Zuli supplied instantly. Remote system in Sector 3396b. Primitive technology, no significant interstellar presence. Categorized as low priority for Frieza Force acquisition due to limited resource value. Both Saiyans stared at her in surprise at this detailed knowledge of an obscure world. I had access to the complete planetary database during my service, she explained, noting their reaction. My memory augmentations retain approximately 94% of reviewed information indefinitely. Convenient, Sarapa commented dryly. Is there anything about Frieza's operation you don't know? Many things, Zuli replied with characteristic literalness. My clearance was limited to scientific divisions. Military deployments, political negotiations, and personal activities of the Cold family remained restricted. She turned back to the holographic display. However, what I do know suggests that our current survival represents a statistical improbability Frieza will eventually seek to correct. Meaning, Kakarot prompted, meaning that remaining in one location, particularly on a world previously targeted for purge, represents increasing risk over time. Her enhanced eyes fixed on him with clinical precision. Dispersion of sets while maintaining communication protocols would optimize survival probability. She was suggesting they split up their growing group of survivors, a tactically sound but emotionally challenging proposition. Kakarot glanced at Sarapa, whose expression suggested similar thoughts. The Raikosians have been generous hosts, he acknowledged, but Zuli's right. Concentrating all survivors here increases vulnerability. We need to establish additional outposts, communication networks, resource caches. And find this Earth, Sarapa added, surprising him. When he raised an eyebrow questioningly, she elaborated. Any Saiyan child raised without knowledge of their heritage would be at risk. If Frieza ever discovered them. The implication was clear. Another Saiyan survivor, potentially Unawa. Of their origins or the danger Frieza represented, needed to be warned and protected. I'll speak with Parsni, Kakarot decided. If these independent Saiyan outposts exist, they could provide the foundation for a dispersed network. From there, we can plan an expedition to locate Earth. As they left Zuli's laboratory, Sarapa fell into step beside him, her voice lowered to ensure privacy. Yo, you trust the Tuffle's information rather easily. Her verification confirmed her basic account, Kakarot pointed out. And her knowledge has proven accurate so far. Verification shows what she chooses to reveal, Sarapa countered. Tuffles were masters of deception before we conquered them, using technology to compensate for physical weakness. This one seems particularly adept. Your point being, just that forming a resistance against Frieza is complicated enough without adding historical enemies to the mix. She hesitated, then added more quietly, your strength has always been seeing potential where others see only threats. But sometimes threats are real. The observation was unexpectedly perceptive, acknowledging both his unique perspective and its potential limitations. Coming from Sarapa, who had initially dismissed his approach entirely, it represented significant evolution in their relationship. I appreciate the concern, Kakarot said sincerely. But right now, we need every resource, every perspective, every advantage we can gather. Zuli represents access to information we wouldn't have otherwise. Sarapa didn't seem entirely convinced but nodded acceptance. Your call. You've earned that much trust at least. The simple acknowledgement meant more than she likely realized. From an elite warrior to a formerly lower-class Saiyan, it represented a fundamental shift in their power dynamic, one based on demonstrated capability rather than inherited status. As they approached the debriefing chamber where Parsni awaited, Kakarot's mind was already racing with possibilities. Independent Saiyan outposts, a child sent to Earth, the expanding network of survivors and allies gathering around their fledgling resistance, seeds of hope taking root in fertile ground. The shadows Frieza had cast across the galaxy were vast and deep, but within them, something new was gathering strength. Not just survival, but the beginnings of genuine resistance. The path ahead remained uncertain, fraught with danger and difficult choices, but for the first time since witnessing his world's destruction, Kakarot felt something beyond rage and determination. He felt possibility. Chapter 2 End Chapter 3, Hidden Strengths. Lightning split the violet sky of Arliss 9, illuminating the makeshift arena where 24 Saiyans had gathered to witness what many considered an Erdati, a tournament among lower-class warriors. Thunder rumbled across the barren highlands, lending dramatic emphasis to the scene as the final competitors circled each other in the mud-slicked fighting pit. Pathetic, muttered a bulky elite warrior to Kakarot's left. Why Frieza's commanders allow this waste of time is beyond comprehension. Lower-class tournaments, he spat into the ruddy soil. Like watching children throw tantrums. Kakarot observed the speaker dispassionately. Kabar, notorious among Frieza's forces for his cruelty and unflinching loyalty. The elite warrior had no he stood mere meters from a leader of the growing Saiyan resistance, believing Kakarot to be merely another soldier on standard assignment to this backwater mining world. Sometimes children surprise you, Kakarot replied mildly, returning his attention to the fight below. The two combatants couldn't have been more different. One, a male with the typical Saiyan bulk and aggression, relied on overwhelming force. Each punch creating small shockwaves that rippled through the saturated ground. The other, female, unusually small for a Saiyan, moved with extraordinary precision, her fighting style unlike any Kakarot had witnessed among their kind. That female, he inquired casually. I don't recognize her. Kabar snorted. Kali, notorious troublemaker, constantly reprimanded for insubordination and unauthorized combat techniques. Waste of Saiyan blood if you ask me. Below, Kali evaded another thunderous attack from her opponent, her movements fluid and economical. Where most Saiyans relied on power and endurance, she seemed to fight like water, flowing around obstacles, striking at precise moments, conserving energy. She moves differently, Kakarot observed. Studies alien fighting styles, Kabar said with disgust. Claims they have tactical value. Disrespects proper Saiyan traditions. Her power level is decent for her class, but her attitude makes her worthless for serious missions. The description might as well have been about Kakarot himself years ago. His interest sharpened as he studied her more carefully. Shorter than average, with a lean, wiry build atypical for female Saiyans. Her black hair was cropped unevenly, as if cut with little concern for appearance, except for a single long braid that whipped behind her as she moved. Her expression remained intensely focused, evaluating and calculating rather than losing herself to battle rage. The male fighter grew increasingly frustrated, his attacks becoming wilder, more desperate. "Stand and fight properly, coward," he roared, voice carrying over the storm's rumble. Kali said nothing, her silence clearly aggravating her opponent further. When he overextended on a particularly powerful strike, he finally counterattacked. Not with raw power, but with a precisely targeted sequence of blows to nerve clusters and pressure points. The larger Saiyan collapsed to his knees, paralyzed temporarily by the technique. Match, called the Overseer, a middle-aged Saiyan with the insignia of Frieza's mining operation on his armor. Victory to Kali. The assembled Saiyans responded with a mixture of reluctant acknowledgement and outright derision. Lower-class tournaments carried little prestige to begin with. Winning through tricks, rather than proper Saiyan combat reduced the achievement further in most eyes. Kali seemed entirely unconcerned by the lukewarm reception. She helped her opponent to his feet once the paralysis wore off, another departure from typical Saiyan protocol, where losers were generally left to recover on their own. Disgraceful, Kabar muttered. If she were in my squad, I'd beat that softness out of her. Kakarot felt a flash of anger but suppressed it carefully. Her techniques seem effective. Against other lower-class fighters, perhaps, Kabar dismissed. Against a true elite, useless. He turned away from the arena. Enough of this farce. Real warriors have duties to attend to. As Kabar departed with his sycophants, Kakarot remained, watching as the crowd dispersed and Kali collected her modest victory token, extra rations for the coming week, he standard prize in these unauthorized tournaments. The storm intensified around them, driving most spectators toward shelter, but she seemed in no hurry, performing cooling exercises in the rain with the same focused precision she'd shown in combat. This mission to Arliss 9 had been disguised as a routine inspection, but its true purpose was recruitment. 6 months had passed since planet Vegeta's destruction, and the resistance had grown cautiously. 26 confirmed Saiyan survivors, 3 sympathetic alien species providing resources and shelter, and a communication network spanning 17 systems. Still, they needed fighters, especially those who might be receptive to Kakarot's unorthodox approach. Kali appeared to be an ideal candidate, but approaching her required caution. Rieza's paranoia regarding surviving Saiyans had intensified in recent months, with increased surveillance and occasional purges of suspected sympathizers. Kakarot made his decision, approaching the fighting pit as the last spectators vanished into the mining colony's rough-hewn buildings. Kali noticed him immediately, her posture shifting subtly into a ready stance despite her apparent relaxation. Impressive victory, he offered neutrally. She assessed him with quick, intelligent eyes. You're not stationed here. Inspection team. Something like that. He allowed the rain to soak him, making no move toward shelter, a deliberate signal that this conversation was worth having despite discomfort. Your fighting style is unusual. You mean improper, she corrected, a defensive edge entering her voice. Unworthy of Saiyan tradition. I've heard it all before. I meant effective, Kakarot clarified. Efficient, intelligent. He studied her reaction carefully. Where did you learn it? Suspicion flickered across her features. Elite warriors rarely showed interest in lower-class techniques except to criticize. Various places, various species. I observe, adapt, improve. Like the Core C nerve strike you used at the end. Their warriors developed that to hunt predators twice their size on their homeworld. Surprise replaced suspicion. You recognize that. Not many Saiyans bother learning about other species' combat styles. I'm not many Saiyans, Kakarot replied simply. The rain intensified further, sheets of water cascading around them. Lightning transformed the landscape momentarily into stark relief, illuminating her face as she made a decision. "There's a cantina near the eastern processing plant," she said finally. "Quieter than the main facility. Better for discussions." Kakarot nodded understanding. "After you." They traversed the mining colony in silence, moving through muddy pathways between prefabricated structures. Arliss 9 was rich in minor ALS critical for Frieza's technological infrastructure but possessed a harsh environment that made extraction challenging. The planet's frequent electromagnetic storms interfered with monitoring SIST. Ms. One reason the Resistance had selected it for recruitment operations. The cantina proved to be little more than a repurposed storage unit, its interior lit by flickering power cells and furnished with salvaged equipment. A handful of off-duty miners, various species conscripted into Frieza's workforce, hunched over meager drinks at scattered tables. No other Saiyans were present. They claimed a corner table, positioned to view both the entrance and emergency exit. Kakarot noted this tactical awareness with approval as they ordered synthetic protein drinks, the standard refreshment on mining worlds where resources were tightly controlled. "So," Kali began once they were settled, voice pitched low beneath the ambient noise. "What does an inspector want with a troublemaking lower-class fighter?" "I'm not actually an inspector," Kakarot admitted, trusting the storm's electromagnetic interference to disrupt any surveillance. "And I'm interested in fighters who think differently." Her eyes narrowed slightly. Dangerous words. Thinking differently isn't exactly encouraged in Frieza's empire. Hence the discretion. He leaned forward slightly. "What do you know about planet Vegeta's destruction?" The question clearly caught her off guard. Her fingers tightened around her drink. "The official report. Meteor collision. Unavoidable natural disaster. Tragic loss for Lord Frieza's forces." She paused, studying him. "Why?" Quote. "And unofficially." A long silence stretched between them as Kali evaluated the risk of the conversation. Finally, she spoke barely above a whisper. "Rumors say it wasn't a meteor. Some claim it was deliberate. But speaking such things is treason." "It's only treason if Frieza deserves loyalty," Kakarot replied evenly. "Which, if the rumors are true, he doesn't." The implications of his statement hung in the air between them. Kali's expression remained carefully neutral, but her energy signature fluctuated subtly. Anger, interest, caution in rapid sequence. "You're either extremely bold or suicidally reckless," she said finally. "Either way, I don't know you well enough for this conversation." "Fair enough." Kakarot reached slowly into his armor, extracting a small data crystal. "Take this. If you're interested in the truth, it contains coordinates for secure communication." He placed it on the table between them. "If not, destroy it and we never had this conversation." Kali made no move to take the crystal. "And if it's a loyalty test?" Frieza's commanders have been known to probe for dissent. A reasonable concern. Kakarot considered a moment, then decided on a calculated risk. The crystal also contains verified memory recordings of planet Vegeta's destruction. Not by meteor, by Frieza himself. Evidence I've gathered at great personal risk. Her eyes widened fractionally. "If you're telling the truth, possessing that would mean execution. For both of us," he agreed. "So either I'm the most elaborate spy Frieza has ever deployed, or you're something else entirely." Kali finally took the crystal, concealing it in a hidden compartment of her worn armor. "Assuming any of this is real, what exactly are you proposing?" "For now, nothing. Review the information. Make your own judgment." Kakarot rose, leaving his drink mostly untouched. "If you decide to make contact, the method is included. If not," he shrugged, "enjoy the extra rations. Your fighting style truly was impressive." As he turned to leave, she spoke again, voice hard with sudden intensity. "Why me? There are stronger warriors, better connected, with higher clearances." Kakarot glanced back. "Because you already question. You already adapt. You look beyond traditional Saiyan limitations." He allowed himself a slight smile. "And B, 'cause anyone Kabar dismisses so thoroughly is likely worth knowing." He departed into the storm, leaving her with a decision that would either add a valuable ally to the resistance or potentially expose their recruitment operation. It was a calculated risk, but one his instincts told him was worth taking. Something in Kali's fighting style, the intelligence behind it, the willingness to incorporate foreign techniques, spoke of a mind not bound by Frieza's conditioning. Lightning fractured the sky once more as Kakarot made his way back to the inspection ship. The storm had intensified further, grounding all routine flights and, more importantly, disrupting surveillance systems. Perfect conditions for his secondary mission. 3 other resistance operatives waited aboard: Nyan, a taciturn survivor of Serapa's original squad; Parsni, the navigator who'd brought news of independent Saiyan outposts; and Turles, whose aggression had been gradually channeled into effective covert operations. Each had been disguised as part of the inspection team, their true purpose known only to each other. Contact made, Nyan inquired as Kakarot sealed the ship's hatch behind him. Yes. Uncertain outcome, but promising. He moved to the communications array, carefully shielded against external monitoring. Status of the primary objective. Turles grinned, displaying uncharacteristic enthusiasm. Confirmed. The rumors were accurate. Frieza's shipment of prototype scanner technology is scheduled for transfer through this system in 3 days. Parsni accessed the manifest during the refinery inspection. This was significant news. The Resistance had received intelligence about Frieza developing advanced detection technology specifically calibrated to identify Saiyan biological signatures at interstellar distances. If deployed throughout his empire, it would make all Resistance movement exponentially more dangerous. Composition of the escort, Kakarot asked, reviewing the data Parsni transferred to the main display. Standard security complement, the navigator reported. 2 mid-class cruisers, automated defense systems, approximately 40 soldiers of various species. No elites assigned. Kakarot studied the projected route thoughtfully. The electromagnetic storms provide perfect cover for intercept. If we time it correctly, their communications will be disrupted long enough for us to disable the escort. Seize the prototype, and disappear before reinforcements arrive. Risky, Nyan observed. If Frieza discovers Saiyans were involved in the theft. He won't, Kakarot assured him. We'll use modified armor without identifiers, and ensure no survivors remain to report Saiyan involvement. The operation will appear to be standard pirates or rival forces. Turles leaned forward eagerly. When do we strike? Not we, Kakarot corrected. The inspection team needs to maintain its cover and depart on schedule. A separate intercept team is already en route, using unmarked vessels. He activated a secure channel. They'll arrive before the shipment and position themselves along the projected storm front. This was the first major offensive operation the Resistance had planned against Frieza's forces, not merely surviving or gathering intelligence, but actively undermining his military capability. The risks were substantial, but the potential reward, preventing Frieza from developing technology to hunt down remaining Saiyans, justified the danger. As Kakarot finalized the operational details, he felt a familiar presence approaching the ship, Kali, moving with deliberate purpose through the storm. Her decision had come more quickly than expected. We have a visitor, he informed the others. Potential recruit. Maintain operational security until I've completed assessment. The ship's entry hatch opened to admit Kali, rain-soaked and intense. Her eyes catalogued the interior and occupants in one swift scan before focusing on Kakarot. That was fast, he observed. I've seen enough of Frieza's cruelty to know tyranny when I encounter it, she replied tersely. Your evidence merely confirmed what I've suspected since the official announcement never felt right. She held up the data crystal. I want in. Whatever you're planning, whatever you're building, I want to be part of it. Kakarot studied her, sensing no deception. You understand the risk. Frieza eliminates suspected resistance without trial or mercy. I've been living under a death sentence since birth, she responded with bitter clarity. Lower-class warriors are disposable resources in Frieza's empire. At least this way, my eventual death serves a purpose I choose. Her words resonated with an authenticity that computational loyalty assessments could never measure. Kakarot glanced at his companions, receiving subtle nods of approval from each. Welcome to the Resistance, Kali, he said simply. We have much to discuss. The memory surfaced with crystalline clarity as Kakarot meditated in the hidden sanctuary they'd established on ARLISS 9's southern continent. 8 months had passed since that stormy recruitment, and Kali had proven herself not mere committed but invaluable, her unorthodox combat techniques complementing the Resistance's growing arsenal of non-traditional strategies. Now, she was leading her own recruitment operations on Dista NT worlds while Kakarot focused on a different challenge, unlocking the hidden power his father had once glimpsed within him. The Sanctuary, a natural cave system modified with scavenged technology, PR. Ovided ideal isolation for dangerous training experiments. Enhanced gravity generators created a punishing environment currently running at 15 times standard gravity, forcing every movement to become a strenuous exercise in control. Sweat poured from Kakarot's bare torso as he moved through complex kata his father had taught him years before. In his mind, Bardock's voice echoed with instruct. Ions that had seemed mysterious then but held new significance now. Power isn't just about strength, Kakarot, his father had told him during one clandestine training session. It's about understanding the energy that flows through all living things, what we call ki. Most Saiyans only scratch the surface, using raw power without comprehension. Young Kakarot had frowned in confusion. But we're the strongest warriors in the universe. How can we not understand power? Bardock's scarred face had softened momentarily. Strength and understanding are different things. A storm has strength, but no purpose, no control. True power comes from knowing your energy so intimately that it becomes an extension of your will, not merely an explosion of force. The lesson had continued with exercises that seemed pointless to a young warrior eager for battle techniques, meditation, energy circulation, precise ki manipulation rather than destructive blasts. Only years later did Kakarot begin to grasp what his father had been teaching him, the foundations of something beyond standard Saiyan capabilities. Now, with planet Vegeta destroyed and Bardock's guidance lost forever, Kakarot struggled to rediscover those principles through relentless experimentation. The gravity chamber hummed with intensity as he pushed himself further, attempting to recreate a technique Bardock had once demonstrated but never fully taught. The ability to compress one's ki internally, building pressure like a star collapsing in on itself, before releasing it in a controlled transformation rather than an explosive attack. The legends speak of a transformation beyond our current form, Bardock had whispered during their final training session, glancing around to ensure they weren't observed. Not the great ape, which sacrifices consciousness for power, but something else, a warrior of unprecedented capability, a Super Saiyan. Young Kakarot had recognized the term from forbidden history texts. But that's just a myth, father. King Vegeta says such stories are distractions from proper warrior discipline. Kings often fear what might surpass them, Bardock had replied with uncharacteristic defiance. Remember, Kakarot, our true potential is not what Frieza or even our own leaders claim it to be. Discover it for yourself. The memory dissolved as pain lanced through Kakarot's body. His muscles spasming from the extended exposure to enhanced gravity. He collapsed to one knee, breathing heavily, frustration building within him. For months he'd attempted to reproduce the internal ki compression technique, achieving only partial success. Brief moments of heightened power followed by energy dispersion and exhaustion. Still pushing yourself to collapse, I see. The voice startled him. Sarapa stood at the chamber entrance, arms crossed as she observed his training. He hadn't sensed her approach, a testament to either her stealth or his deep concentration. Gravity settings at dangerous levels again, she noted. Checking the control panel, 15 times standard, you're either determined or suicidal. Kakarot rose shakily, his body protesting the movement. Just determined. How long have you been watching? Long enough to see you're trying something beyond standard techniques. She entered the chamber fully, her own body adjusting smoothly to the enhanced gravity, evidence of her exceptional conditioning. Something your father taught you. Tried to teach me, Kakarot corrected, reaching for a hydration unit. I never mastered it before. The words died in his throat. Before Frieza murdered him along with their entire planet remained unspoken but understood. Sarapa moved closer, studying him with professional assessment. Your energy circulation pattern is unusual. Not the standard Saiyan approach at all. In the months since planet Vegeta's destruction, their relationship had evolved from reluctant allies to something more complex. As two of the highest-ranking survivors, they'd worked closely coordinating the growing resistance, a partnership that had gradually developed mutual respect, then genuine trust, and recently, something neither openly acknowledged. Bardock believed most Saiyan techniques wasted energy, Kakarot explained, welcoming the distraction from his failed training attempt. He studied other species' approaches to ki manipulation, integrated what he found useful. Heretical, Sarapa observed without judgment. But potentially valuable. The elite warriors always dismissed alternative combat philosophies as beneath consideration. A weakness Frieza exploited, Kakarot pointed out. Predictability makes for vulnerable warriors. She nodded, then surprised him by adjusting her armor and moving into a combat stance. Show me, not the theory, the application. Spar with me under these gravity conditions. The invitation was unexpected but not unwelcome. Sarapa rarely sought training partners, preferring to maintain her formidable skills through solitary practice. That she offered now suggested both professional curiosity and something more personal. You're sure? 15 times gravity is extreme even for elite conditioning. A rare smile flickered across her features. Afraid I'll embarrass you. The challenge was good-natured but genuine. Kakarot matched her stance, adjusting to the intensive gravity with practiced determination. Your funeral, he replied with equal lightness. What followed was unlike any sparring session either had experienced, partly due to the punishing environment, but primarily because both fighters unconsciously removed the restraints they maintained in training with others. Neither feared injuring the other, both recognized an equal who could withstand their true capabilities. Sarapa fought with the refined precision elite warriors were known for, each movement economical, powerful, executed with textbook perfection. Yet Kakarot noted subtle adaptations she'd incorporated since joining the resistance, techniques borrowed from alien fighting styles, approaches that sacrificed raw power for tactical advantage. In contrast, Kakarot's style remained fundamentally unorthodox, fluid, unpredictable. Drawing from dozens of combat traditions he'd studied secretly during his missions. Under extreme gravity, this adaptive approach proved advantageous, requiring less sustained energy expenditure than conventional Saiyan techniques. Minutes stretched into an hour as they pushed each other to increasing limits. The gravity chamber's reinforced walls absorbed the impact of their exchanges, preventing detection by any of Frieza's long-range sensors. Both warriors were soon drenched in sweat, breathing heavily, yet neither suggested ending the session. As fatigue mounted, Kakarot felt something shift in his energy circulation, the compression he'd been attempting earlier suddenly coming more naturally through the dynamic demands of combat. His ki began collapsing inward, creating a dense core of power unlike anything he'd achieved in solo training. Sarapa noticed the change immediately. Your energy signature is fluctuating, she observed between exchanges. Becoming more concentrated. Bardock's technique, Kakarot confirmed, struggling to maintain the compression while continuing to fight. Internal ki pressure rather than external projection. Show me, she demanded. Creating distance between them. Full demonstration. Kakarot centered himself, focusing on the compressed energy core he'd inadvertently developed during their sparring. Unlike his previous attempts, the compression remained stable, a tight spiral of power cycling inward rather than dispersing outward. Following instinct, he directed this concentrated energy through specific meridian points his father had identified, pathways largely ignored in traditional Saiyan power techniques. The effect was immediate and dramatic. His muscle fibers became saturated with highly concentrated ki, creating an internal transformation rather than an external energy field. His power level spiked sharply without the usual aura manifestation, the energy contained within his body rather than radiating outward. Remarkable, Sarapa whispered, her scouter giving readings that clearly shocked her. Your power level just doubled, but your energy expenditure decreased. How is that possible? Efficiency, Kakarot explained, maintaining the state with careful concentration. Standard techniques leak energy constantly. This approach recycles it internally, creating a closed system. The technique wasn't perfect. He could feel the strain of maintaining the compression, but it represented a breakthrough in his understanding of his father's teachings. This wasn't the legendary Super Saiyan transformation Bardock had mentioned, but perhaps a step in that direction, a foundation upon which greater capabilities might be built. Can you teach this? Sarapa asked, professional curios. Ity temporarily overriding her usual reserve. I'm still learning it myself, Kakarot admitted, gradually releasing the compression as fatigue made it unsustainable. But yes, I think so. With practice. As the enhanced state faded, Kakarot found himself unexpectedly lightheaded. He staggered slightly, and Sarapa moved with surprising quickness to steady him, her hand gripping his arm firmly. Contact lingered longer than strictly necessary. Something unspoken passed between them, acknowledgement of a connection that had been building gradually since their shared experience of planetary destruction. "You should rest," she said, voice uncharacteristically gentle. "Energy compression techniques can deplete reserves if mishandled." "Speaking from experience?" he asked, curious about her apparent familiarity with advanced key manipulation. She hesitated, then offered a rare personal disclosure. The elite training included experimental techniques not taught to other classes. Some similar to what you just demonstrated, though less refined. Her expression grew distant. Few mastered them. Those who failed suffered consequences. The statement hinted at experiences she rarely discussed. The harsh reality of elite Saiyan training, where failure often meant permanent injury or worse. It explained much about her disciplined approach to combat and life in general. "That's why you survived when others didn't," Kakarot realized. "You mastered techniques most elites dismissed as unnecessary." "I survived because I was off-world during the attack," she corrected, reverting to her typical pragmatism. "But yes, I've always believed in comprehensive preparation rather than relying solely on natural strength." Another commonality between them, though arrived at from vastly different directions. Kakarot from his father's unorthodox teachings, Sarapa from the ruthless perfectionism of elite training. The gravity chamber's control panel beeped, indicating an incoming secure communication. Sarapa moved to activate it, her professional demeanor returning instantly. "Report," she commanded. "Operation successful," came Turles's voice, tight with controlled excitement. "Package secured, all objectives completed. Returning to rendezvous point Alpha with minimal complications." The prototype scanner technology, their first major acquisition from Frieza's forces. Kakarot felt a surge of satisfaction despite his physical exhaustion. "Casualties?" he inquired. "None on our side," Turles reported. "Enemy forces neutralized completely. No witnesses, no traceable evidence." "Excellent," Sarapa approved. "Maintain communication blackout until you reach secure space. Full debriefing upon arrival." As she terminated the connection, she turned to Kakarot with rare animation in her typically controlled features. "This changes our operational capabilities significantly. With this technology, we can not only shield ourselves from Frieza's detection systems but potential. Why locate other Saiyan survivors by modifying its parameters?" Kakarot nodded agreement. "And study the detection methods Frieza planned to use against us. Knowledge that could prove crucial if he broke off as another wave of fatigue struck, the aftereffects of his energy experimentation catching up to him. "Enough for today," Sarapa decided, moving to the gravity controls and gradually reducing the setting to normal. "You've made progress with your father's technique, and our first major operation against Frieza succeeded. Celebrate these victories by not collapsing from exhaustion." Her concern, practical though it was, represented another evolution in their relationship. Early in their alliance, she would have dismissed physical limitations as weakness. Now she recognized the strategic value of proper recovery. As the gravity normalized, Kakarot felt the full impact of the extended training session. His muscles trembled with fatigue, energy reserves depleted not just by the enhanced gravity but by the internal compression technique he'd finally begun to master. "The technique has significant military applications," Sarapa observed as they exited the training chamber together. "If other resistance fighters could learn it, our combat effectiveness would increase dramatically without revealing our power levels to enemy scouters." "It's not without risks," Kakarot cautioned. "The internal pressure can damage the body if improperly channeled. We'd need to develop a proper training protocol before attempting to teach others." They moved through the hidden complex toward the living quarters, passing occasional resistance members who acknowledged them with respectful nods. The sanctuary on ARLISS-9 had become one of 3 primary bases for their growing movement, its electromagnetic disturbances providing natural concealment from Frieza's scanning technology. "The intercept team returns tomorrow," Sarapa noted as they reached the junction where their paths would separate. "We should prepare for immediate analysis of the prototype. Zuli will want access to the technology as soon as possible." The Tuffle scientist had proven herself invaluable to the resistance. her intimate knowledge of Frieza's technological infrastructure allowing them to exploit vulnerabilities most wouldn't recognize. Her relationship with the Saiyan survivors remained complicated, high historical animosity gradually giving way to pragmatic cooperation, but her contributions were undeniable. "I'll inform her," Kakarot agreed. "Though I suspect she's already preparing her laboratory for the analysis." Sarapa hesitated at the junction, uncharacteristically uncertain. "Your father's technique," she said finally. "If you're planning to continue developing it, I'd like to participate. My experience with elite energy manipulation might provide useful perspective." The offer represented more than mere professional interest. It was an extension of trust, a willingness to share her closely guarded elite training knowledge. "I'd welcome the assistance," Kakarot replied sincerely. "Tomorrow, after the debriefing." She nodded, then surprised him by adding, "Your father was right, you know. About Saiyan potential being greater than we were taught. I've suspected it myself for years, though such thoughts were dangerous to express under King Vegeta's rule." "Another reason Frieza feared us," Kakarot observed. "Not just our current strength, but what we might become." "What we still might become," Sarapa corrected, meeting his gaze with unexpected intensity. "What you might show us how to become." The statement carried weight beyond its surface meaning, acknowledgement of his emerging leadership role in their movement, recognition of his unique approach to Saiyan capabilities. Coming from her, formerly one of the elite's most respected warriors, it represented significant evolution in the power dynamics that had once defined their society. "Rest well, Kakarot," she said finally, turning toward her quarters. "Tomorrow brings new challenges." As she departed, Kakarot found himself reflecting on how thoroughly their world had changed. Old hierarchies of class and status had been rendered meaningless by genocide, replaced by merit-based relationships forged in survival. Elites worked alongside lower-class warriors toward common goals, sharing knowledge previously restricted by rigid tradition. From destruction, something new was emerging, not merely resistance against Frieza, but a reimagining of what Saiyan society could be. Whether this transformation would prove lasting remained uncertain, but its potential intrigued him as much as the energy techniques he'd been attempting to master. With these thoughts occupying his mind, Kakarot retired to his quarters. Body exhausted but spirit energized by the day's multiple breakthroughs. Absolutely fascinating, Zuli murmured, her cybernetically enhanced fingers manipulating the disassembled components of Frieza's prototype scanner. The primary detection matrix uses quantum entanglement principles to identify specific genetic signatures across vast distances, exponentially more sophisticated than standard bioscanners. The TUFL scientist had been working continuously since the intercepted technology arrived 18 hours earlier, her enhanced physiology requiring minimal rest compared to her Saiyan allies. Her laboratory, a repurposed section of the Arliss 9 sanctuary, hummed with equipment salvaged from various sources, modified by her unique expertise. Kakarot observed her work with genuine interest. Having developed unexpected respect for the surviving TUFL's brilliant mind, could it have detected Saiyan specifically? Precisely its purpose, she confirmed, magnifying a microscopic component through her augmented visual system. The calibration is specifically attuned to Saiyan genetic markers, particularly the chromosomal sequences responsible for your transformative capabilities. This confirmed their intelligence about Frieza's intentions, a galaxy-wide hunting system for surviving Saiyans. "Can it be modified, repurposed for our needs?" Sarapa asked from where she leaned against a workstation, arms crossed in her characteristic pose. "Unquestionably," Zuli replied without looking up from her work. "In fact, its original design makes it ideal for recalibration. With appropriate modifications, we could potentially detect Saiyan genetic signatures ourselves, locate survivors beyond our current network." The implications were significant. Despite their growing numbers, the Resistance had confirmed only 43 Saiyan survivors, a fraction of what they suspected might have escaped the planet's destruction. Others remained scattered throughout the galaxy, unaware of the organized resistance or unable to make contact safely. "Timeline for modification?" Kakarot inquired. Zuli's cybernetic eyes calculated visibly, data streams reflecting in their augmented pupils. "Approximately 72 hours for initial repurposing. Full integration with our existing detection networks would require additional time. Prioritize accordingly," Kakarot decided. The ability to locate other survivors takes precedence over immediate integration. The laboratory door slid open to admit Turles, whose recent successful operation had elevated his standing within the resistance. The formerly problematic warrior had found purpose in covert operations, his natural aggression channeled into precisely targeted strikes against Frieza's infrastructure. "The council is assembled," he announced. "All cell leaders present are connected via secure channel. This would be the first full gathering of resistance leadership since they'd established the cell STR. Ukture, a security measure designed to ensure that no single capture could compromise the entire movement. Each cell operated semi-autonomously in different sectors of space, coordinated through encrypt TED communications and occasional in-person councils. "We'll continue this discussion after the meeting," Kakarot informed Zuli, who acknowledged with a distracted nod, already reabsorbed in her analysis. He departed with Serapa and Turles, moving through the sanctuary's winding corridors toward the central chamber they'd designated for leadership gatherings. Security measures intensified as the Y approached. Energy barriers keyed to specific biological signatures, scanner systems monitoring for surveillance devices, armed guards positioned at strategic intervals. The chamber itself had been designed with both physical and energetic security in mind. Its walls contained materials that blocked all known forms of remote monitoring, while specialized field generators created a disruption barrier against psychic intrusion. In Frieza's empire, no precaution was excessive. Inside, the resistance leadership had assembled, a diverse group that would have been unthinkable under traditional Saiyan hierarchy. Elite and lower-class warriors sat alongside non-Saiyan allies, united by common purpose despite their varied backgrounds. Kakarot recognized familiar faces among those physically present: Kali, now leading her own cell focused on recruitment and intelligence gathering; Nyan, Serapa's former subordinate, commanding the Resistance's primary strike team; Parsni, whose navigation RTISE had proven crucial in establishing their hidden network. Others participated via secured holographic projection, cell leaders operating in distant sectors, too far to attend physically without risking detection. As Kakarot entered, conversations quieted naturally, not through formal protocol but organic recognition of his central role in their movement. Though they had established no official leadership structure, preferring tactical flexibility over rigid hierarchy, his vision had shaped their organization from its inception. The operation was successful, he announced without preamble, knowing this news was what most had been waiting to hear. The prototype scanner technology has been secured, with no traceable connection to our movement. Frieza's forces believe it was destroyed by conventional pirates seeking valuable technology. Approving murmurs circulated through the gathering. Their first direct action against Frieza's military infrastructure had succeeded perfectly. AM. Orally boost for a resistance still defining its capabilities. "What exactly can this scanner do?" asked Raditz, a recently recruited survivor who had joined after months hiding in the outer territories. Kakarot's biological brother remained somewhat peripheral to the resistance leadership, his traditional Saiyan viewpoints occasionally creating friction with their more progressive approach. In Frieza's hands, it would have allowed systematic hunting of Saiyan survivors throughout the galaxy, Kakarot explained. In ours, once modified, it may help us locate other Saiyans beyond our current network. So we've moved from merely hiding to actively interfering with Frieza's operations, observed Celsus, one of the elite survivors who'd initially resisted Kakarot's leadership but gradually recognized the effectiveness of his approach. "A significant escalation, a necessary one," Serapa countered. "Remaining purely defensive ensures eventual discovery and elimination. Strategic offensive actions against carefully selected targets represent our best chance for long-term survival." And beyond survival. This from Kali, her intense focus characteristic of her approach to all resistance matters. Are we discussing merely continuing to exist, or actually challenging Frieza's dominance eventually? The question addressed the underlying tension within their movement. Were they merely refugees seeking to endure? Or the seeds of a genuine rebellion with aspirations to overthrow the tyrant who had destroyed their homeworld? Both, Kakarot replied after a measured pause. For now, survival and growth remain our primary objectives. But each operation, each new ally, each technological advancement brings us closer to a position from which meaningful challenge becomes possible. With 43 confirmed Saiyans, Raditz scoffed. against an empire controlling thousands of worlds. That's not strategy, it's delusion. Numbers alone don't determine outcomes, Kakarot countered calmly. Frieza destroyed our planet precisely because he feared what even a small group of Saiyans might become. He recognized our potential for growth, a potential we're only beginning to understand ourselves. He glanced at Sarapa, remembering their training session and the breakthrough with his father's compression technique. We've been limited not just by Frieza's oppression but by our own restrictive traditions. By exploring capabilities beyond conventional Saiyan approaches, we may discover strengths Frieza never anticipated. This philosophy, that Saiyan potential extended beyond their traditional understanding, remained controversial among the survivors. Some, particularly those from elite backgrounds, considered it borderline heretical. Others, especially younger warriors like Kali, embraced it enthusiastically. Speaking of potential, Sarapa interjected, moving the discussion toward practical matters. Kakarot has been developing an energy manipulation technique that could significantly enhance our combat effectiveness while concealing power levels from standard detection. This announcement generated immediate interest. Concealment of power levels represented a critical tactical advantage in a galaxy where scouter technology had made surprise attacks increasingly difficult. A demonstration would be appropriate, suggested Nyan, ever the practical tactician. Kakarot nodded agreement, moving to the center of the chamber where space allowed for limited energy projection. This technique derives from principles my father researched, internal compression rather than external projection of ki. Quote, he centered himself, focusing on the internal meridian pathways he'd identified during previous training. The compression came more easily now, his body remembering the correct circulation pattern. His muscle fibers became saturated with highly concentrated energy, creating the distinctive state he'd achieved with Sarapa's assistance. The assembled Wario RS observed with professional interest as his power level increased dramatically without the typical external manifestation. Those with active scouters registered the spike in readings despite the lack of visible aura. Impressive, acknowledged Celsus reluctantly, but what practical application does this serve beyond concealment? Efficiency, Kakarot explained, maintaining the compressed STA with greater ease than in previous attempts. Standard energy projection wastes significant power through radiation. This technique recycles energy internally, allowing sustained higher performance with reduced expenditure. Like the difference between an engine that burns most of its fuel as waste heat versus one that converts nearly all energy to useful work, added one of the non-Saiyan Resistance members, a technical specialist from a species known for engineering prowess. Precisely, Kakarot confirmed. In practical terms, it means fighters can maintain higher power levels for extended periods while remaining less detectable to standard scouters. Can this be taught? Asked Kali, immediate tactical applications clearly running through her mind. With proper training, yes. Arapa answered before Kakarot could respond. Though it requires abandoning certain conventional approaches to ki manipulation that most Saiyans take for granted. The discussion expanded into tactical applications and training protocols. The leadership group's initial skepticism giving way to professional interest as they recognized the technique's potential value. Even Raditz, despite his general resistance to innovation, acknowledged the practical advantages of energy concealment in their current circumstances. As the technical discussion continued, a priority alert sounded from the communication array. All attention immediately shifted as a resistance operator activated the secure channel. Incoming transmission from Cell 7, the operator reported. Priority Alpha, authentication confirmed. Cell 7 operated in the territories nearest Frieza's primary operations, the most dangerous assignment in their network, focused on deep intelligence gathering rather than direct action. Put it through, Kakarot authorized. A holographic projection materialized, distorted and intermittent, indicating transmission under difficult conditions. The cell leader's face appeared briefly before dissolving into static, then reforming. Emergency protocol initiated, the fragmented transmission continued. Frieza has, and scheduled inspection of, hunting surviving Saiyans personally. The transmission degraded further, critical information lost to interference. Kakarot moved closer to the projection, trying to extract meaning from the fragments. Discovered resistance activity, EU Elite Hunting Squad formed. Commander named Ginyu, specialized in The assembled leadership exchanged concerned glances. The Ginyu name was unknown to them, but the formation of a specialized hunting squad represented a significant escalation in Frieza's response to their activities. Planet Namek mentioned repeatedly. Frieza obsessed with legend of. The transmission dissolved completely, replaced by emergency encoding that indicated the cell had initiated blackout protocols, their standard response to imminent discovery. Attempt to re-establish contact, Kakarot ordered. Full spectrum, priority override. The operators worked frantically, but the secure channel remained dead, either deliberately terminated by Cell 7 or forcibly disconnected by external factors. Last confirmed location, Sarapa demanded. Sector 9 Delta, approximately 26 hours ago, reported the communications specialist. Near Frieza Outpost 17, a heavy silence fell over the chamber as the implications settled. Cell 7's proximity to Frieza's operations made them valuable for intelligence but perpetually vulnerable to discovery. Their sudden silence suggested the worst. We need to assume Cell 7 is compromised. Nyan stated the difficult truth first. Emergency containment protocols should be initiated immediately. These protocols, designed to isolate potentially compromised CELLs from the wider network, were essential for security but represented a significant setback to their intelligence capabilities. More personally, they meant potentially abandoning resistance members Frieza's notorious interrogation techniques. Agreed, Kakarot acknowledged grimly. But we also need to understand what information they were trying to convey. Namek, Ginyu, a new hunting squad, SA could represent critical intelligence. Namek is an obscure world in the outer territories, Parsni supplied, his navigator's knowledge immediately relevant. Inhabited by a peaceful species with limited technology. No strategic value that I'm aware of, certainly nothing that would interest Frieza personally. And yet the transmission suggested his direct involvement, Sarapa noted. Someth. On Namek has captured Frieza's attention specifically. The transmission also mentioned a legend, Kali pointed out. Frieza doesn't strike me as someone who chases myths without purpose. Arat considered the fragments of information thoughtfully. We need more intelligence before drawing conclusions. Initiate emergency containment for Cell 7's network, but prepare a reconnaissance mission to their last known location. Volunteer basis only, the risk level will be extreme. I'll go, Turles offered immediately, his recent successful operation having bolstered his confidence. My team is experienced with high-risk infiltration. We'll need navigation expertise as well, Kakarot added. Parsni, would you? Of course, the navigator agreed without hesitation. I know the sector well. The meeting continued with detailed planning for both the reconnaissance mission and broader security measures to protect against Frieza's apparent escalation. The fragmented transmission had cast a shadow over their earlier success, reminding all present of the dangers they faced and the resources their enemy commanded. As the session concluded and leadership dispersed to their respective responsibilities, Kakarot remained in the chamber with Sarapa, both processing the implications of this development. Frieza forming a specialized hunting squad suggests we've become more than an irritant, she observed. He considers us a genuine threat. Or he's becoming paranoid, Kakarot suggested. Either way, it changes our operational requirements. We'll need to accelerate training, improve security protocols, possibly relocate some of our more exposed bases. Sarapa studied him thoughtfully. You're not telling everyone everything, are you? About the transmission. Her perception didn't surprise him. They'd worked closely enough to recognize subtle shifts in each other's demeanor. There was something in the mention of Namek and legends that triggered a memory. Something. My father said during our last training session. About. Kakarot hesitated, unsure whether to voice suspicions based on such tenuous connections. Bardock spoke of legends, specifically the Super Saiyan legend that King Vegeta considered forbidden knowledge. But he also mentioned something else, artifacts of power scattered across the galaxy after some ancient conflict. Objects that could grant immense capabilities to those who found them. And you think Frieza is seeking such artifacts on Namek? Sarapa's tone held skepticism but not dismissal. I think Frieza doesn't waste resources without purpose, Kakarot replied. If he's personally interested in an otherwise insignificant world, there must be something there worth his attention. Something he considers valuable enough to pursue himself rather than through subordinates. Something that potentially threatens his dominance, Sarapa concluded, following his reasoning. Or promises to enhance it significantly. Exactly. She considered this. Tactical mind evaluating implications. If such artifacts exist and Frieza acquires them, then our already difficult position becomes nearly impossible, Kakarot finished. Which means we need to understand what he is seeking, and potentially find it first. Namek, Sarapa repeated thoughtfully. I'll have Parsni gather all available intelligence on the planet and its sea ultra before the reconnaissance mission departs. If there are legends associated with that world, we need to know them. Kakarot nodded agreement. I'll speak with Zuli as well. If anyone in our organization might have encountered relevant information during her time in Frieza's scientific division, it would be her. They departed the chamber together, each already focused on their respective tasks. The resistance had weathered its first 8 months through caution and strategic patience. Now circumstances demanded acceleration of their plans, acceptance of greater risks. As they walked, Sarapa spoke again, her voice carrying an unusual note of personal concern beneath her professional tone. The energy compression technique we've been developing, we should prioritize its mastery. If Rieza is assembling specialized forces against us, conventional power levels won't be sufficient. Agreed, Kakarot said. We'll establish a training protocol for the most promising fighters immediately. Starting with us, she added. Tonight, after operational planning concludes. No distractions, full focus. The suggestion carried multiple layers of meaning, professional commitment to developing tactical advantages, but also continuation of the personal connection that had begun emerging during their previous training session. Tonight, Kakarot confirmed, acknowledging both dimensions of her proposal. As they separated to attend their respective responsibilities, Kakarot found himself reflecting on how rapidly circumstances continued to evolve. Their resistance had achieved its first significant victory against Frieza's infrastructure, only to discover the tyrant was escalating his own operations against them. The compressed energy technique that had begun as personal exploration of his father's teachings now represented a potential tactical advantage in an increasingly dangerous conflict. And beneath it all, his relationship with Sarapa continued its gradual transformation from reluctant alliance to genuine partnership, perhaps even something more significant, though neither had openly acknowledged that possibility. The path ahead remained fraught with danger and uncertainty. But for the first time since witnessing planet Vegeta's destruction, Kakarot felt something beyond mere determination driving him forward. The resistance was becoming more than a survival mechanism. It was evolving into a genuine movement with purpose beyond vengeance, creating something new from the ashes of their destroyed civilization. Whether that creation would ultimately challenge Frieza's dominance or merely carve out space to exist beyond his reach remained to be seen. But the hidden strengths emerging among their scattered survivors suggested possibilities even Kakarot hadn't initially imagined. The training chamber's lighting had been dimmed to minimal levels, creating an environment of focused intensity rather than the harsh illumination typical of Saiyan training facilities. Kakarot and Sarapa faced each other in the center of the space, both stripped to essential training attire, his torso bare, her in a form-fitting compression garment that allowed unrestricted movement. The key lies in the meridian pathways, Kakarot explained, demonstrating the internal energy circulation pattern his father had taught him. Most Saiyan techniques channel ki outward through major pathways, creating powerful but inefficient external projections. This approach instead cycles energy through secondary and tertiary networks, creating internal pressure points that amplify power without external radiation. Sarapa observed with characteristic intensity, her elite training allowing her to perceive subtle energy movements most warriors would miss entirely. Similar to the final phase of elite overcharge techniques, but with different circulation patterns. Exactly, Kakarot confirmed. The elite approach prioritizes explosive release for maximum immediate impact. This technique maintains compression for sustained enhancement. They had been working for nearly 3 hours, refining the technique and adapting it to Sarapa's distinctive energy signature. Unlike most Saiyans, whose training focused exclusively on personal advancement, Kakarot had discovered genuine satisfaction in sharing knowledge, particularly with someone capable of understanding its nuances and contributing improvements. Let me attempt the full sequence, Sarapa requested, moving to the center of the chamber. She centered herself with practiced discipline, then began the complex internal circulation pattern they'd been developing. Her energy signature shifted visibly to Kakarot's trained perception, contracting inward rather than radiating outward, cycling through the secunda Rai meridian points with increasing intensity. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. Her muscle fibers became saturated with compressed ki, creating enhanced capacity without the typical pow aura that would register on standard scouters. Her already exceptional physical capabilities amplified noticeably as the technique stabilized. Remarkable, Kakarot observed, genuine admiration in his voice. You've mastered in hours what took me weeks of trial and error. Elite training provides certain advantages, Sarapa acknowledged, maintaining the compressed state with apparent ease. Quote, the physical discipline required for advanced techniques transfers effectively to new applications. She executed a complex sequence of movements to test the enhancement's stability, her speed and precision visibly increased. Unlike Kakarot's earlier attempts, her energy compression remained consistent throughout the demonstration, evidence of her exceptional ki control. The military applications are significant, she noted, gradually releasing the compression as the demonstration concluded, particularly for covert operations where power detection would compromise mission parameters. Beyond that, Kakarot added, it represents a fundamentally different approach to Saiyan capabilities, one Frieza may not anticipate. Sarapa considered this as she recovered her normal energy state. You believe such techniques might eventually provide advantage against Frieza himself. Not this technique alone, Kakarot clarified, but the principle it represents, that our traditional understanding of Saiyan capabilities has been artificially limited. My father believed our potential extended far beyond what we'd been taught. She moved closer, professional interest evident in her focused expression. You've mentioned your father's teachings frequently. He was considered unusual even among mid-class warriors, wasn't he? He was, Kakarot acknowledged. The elite leadership distrusted him, too independent, too willing to question established protocols. Even King Vegeta kept him at a distance despite recognizing his combat value. Yet he was permitted to develop unorthodox techniques, Sarapa observed. Strange, given the rigid control typically exercised over warrior development. Kakarot had considered this apparent contradiction himself. I believe he concealed the true nature of his research. Officially, he focused on improving standard combat efficiency. Privately, he explored capabilities the leadership actively discouraged, including these compression techniques, and others, Kakarot confirmed. Techniques derived from species the Saiyans had conquered or encountered. Approaches that didn't rely on raw power but instead on understanding energy at fundamental levels. Sarapa absorbed this thoughtfully. Your father sounds like he would have approved of our current alliance with non-Saiyan species. He would have, Kakarot agreed. Though I doubt he ever imagined cooperation with a surviving Tuffle. This observation drew an unexpected smile from Sarapa, a rare expression that transformed her typically severe features. Life contains strange ironies. The Saiyan-Tuffle conflict defined our history for generations. Now a Tuffle scientist helps us survive extinction. And an elite warrior trains alongside a formerly lower-class soldier, Kakarot added, acknowledging the equally significant shift in their own relationship. The observation created a moment of heightened awareness between them, recognition of how thoroughly circumstances had transformed their respective positions. In the old hierarchy, their current partnership would have been unthinkable. Now it formed the core of a movement that might eventually challenge the most powerful being in the galaxy. Class meant nothing against Frieza's attack, Sarapa said finally. Elite and lower class alike were reduced to cosmic dust. Perhaps that's the one valuable lesson from our near extinction, the arbitrary nature of the divisions we once considered fundamental. Coming from someone raised in the elite tradition, this perspective represented remarkable evolution. Kakarot studied her with new appreciation, recognizing how profoundly her worldview had shifted since their first encounter on planet Daikon. Shall we continue? He suggested, redirecting focus to their training. The technique has additional applications we haven't explored fully. Actually, Sarapa countered, I think we've reached sufficient mastery of the basic approach. I'd like to attempt something more advanced, combining the compression technique with elite energy manipulation methods. This proposal intrigued Kakarot. What specifically do you have in mind? The elite warriors developed Tekken, IQs for rapid energy transfer between specific bodily systems, she explained. Primarily used for instantaneous power redirection during combat. Combining that approach with your compression method might create capabilities neither discipline achieved independently. The suggestion demonstrated both her technical understanding and innovative thinking, qualities Kakarot had come to respect deeply. Show me the elite technique first. Then we'll explore integration possibilities. What followed was a remarkable exchange of knowledge that would have been forbidden under their former societies. Structure. Elite-level techniques shared with a formerly lower-class warrior, combined with approaches developed outside traditional Saiyan methodology entirely. As they worked, the boundaries between teacher and student blurred, each contributing insights from their distinct backgrounds to create something genuinely new. Hours passed unnoticed as they explored increasingly sophisticated energy manipulations. The combination of Saiyapa's elite precision with Kakarot's unorthodox circulation patterns yielded several breakthrough moments, techniques neither could have developed independently. Eventually, physical exhaustion demanded acknowledgement. They concluded their training session with mutual recognition of significant progress, both in technical development and collaborative methodology. This should be expanded to other resistance fighters, Saiyapa suggested as they powered down the training chamber's systems. Starting with those most adaptable to new approaches. Kali would be an ideal candidate, Kakarot agreed. Her background in alternative fighting styles provides excellent foundation for these techniques. And perhaps Nyan, Saiyapa added. Despite his traditional approach, his technical precision is exceptional. They continued discussing potential applications as they exited the training chamber, both energized despite physical fatigue. The corridors of the Sanctuary lay quiet in the facility's night cycle, most resistance members having retired hours earlier. The reconnaissance mission departs tomorrow, Saiyapa noted as they approached the junction where their paths would separate. Turles and Parsney seem well prepared, but the risk level remains concerning. Agreed, Kakarot said, but we need that intelligence, particularly regarding Frieza's interest in Namek. She nodded, then hesitated uncharacteristically at the junction. Something in her demeanor suggested thoughts beyond their professional discussion, considerations more personal in nature. Your quarters are mine, she asked finally, the direct question typical of her straightforward approach. The invitation, though not entirely unexpected given the evolving nature of their relationship, still caught Kakarot momentarily off guard. Their connection had been building gradually through months of shared responsibility and mutual respect, but neither had previously acknowledged its progression beyond professional partnership. That depends, he replied with equal directness. Is this continuation of training, or something else entirely? A hint of amusement flickered in her dark eyes. Perhaps both. Energy circulation techniques have applications beyond combat. The statement carried obvious implications, delivered with the confidence typical of elite warriors, direct rather than coy. Acknowledging desire without unnecessary elaboration. Your quarters, Kakarot decided. They're further from the command center. Fewer interruptions likely. She nodded approval of the practical consideration. And they continued together down the eastern corridor toward the elite housing section. Their pace remained unhurried, neither feeling need to rush what both recognized as a significant evolution in their alliance. Saiyapa's quarters reflected her personality, spartanly furnished but precisely arranged, functional rather than comfortable. Unlike many elite warriors, who adorned their personal spaces with trophies from conquered worlds, she maintained minimal possessions, a philosophical approach Kakarot had come to associate with her pragmatic nature. The resistance leadership would find this development interesting, she observed as the door sealed behind them, activating privacy protocols automatically. The formerly lower-class rebel and the elite commander. They have more important matters to concern themselves with, Kakarot replied. Including our survival against Frieza's escalating efforts. True enough, she acknowledged. Though relationships among leadership always affect organizational dynamics, this practical assessment of their personal involvement was characteristically Saiyapa, evaluating all dimensions of a situation, including potential complications. It was one of many qualities Kakarot had come to appreciate about her approach. We've moved beyond old hierarchies, he reminded her. Merit rather than birth determines value now. Indeed, she agreed, moving closer, and your merit has been amply demonstrated. What followed transcended the physical parameters typically associated with Saiyan interactions. Where their species was known for aggression in all things, including intimacy, their connection incorporated the same innovative approach they'd developed in training, integration of distinct methodologies to create something more sophisticated than either tradition alone. The energy compression techniques they'd mastered found new applications as they explored each other's physical responses. Saiya's elite precision complemented Kakarot's adaptive flexibility, creating an experience that engaged their warrior discipline rather than suppressing it. Hours later, as artificial dawn began filtering through the sanctuary's environmental systems, they lay together in rare relaxation, the vigilance both typically maintained temporarily suspended in each other's presence. This changes nothing operationally, Saiya stated. Not a question but an affirmation of continued professional focus despite their personal evolution. Of course not, Kakarot agreed. If anything, it enhances operational effectiveness through improved communication and coordination. She propped herself on one elbow, studying him with amused assessment. You make intimacy sound like a tactical advantage, isn't it? He countered lightly. Understanding each other at fundamental levels improves everything from combat synchronization to strategic planning. A surprisingly pragmatic perspective from someone I once considered dangerously idealistic, she observed. I've always been pragmatic, Kakarot corrected. Just with different priorities than most Saiyans. She considered this thoughtfully. True enough. You are. He cognized the futility of endless conquest long before Frieza's betrayal forced the rest of us to reevaluate. The observation carried genuine respect, acknowledgement that his formerly criticized perspective had proven prescient as circumstances evolved. Coming from someone who had once embodied elite Saiyan values, it represented remarkable personal growth. We should join the mission briefing, Kakarot said eventually. Practical considerations reasserting themselves. Turles and Parsney depart in 3 hours. Saiya nodded agreement, moving with characteristic efficiency as they prepared tea. Resume their leadership responsibilities. No lengthy discussions of relationship parameters or emotional declarations. Such conversation would have seemed unnecessary to both, their understanding having developed through actions rather than words. As they exited her quarters together, rejoining the sanctuary's main corridors as resistance members began their daily routines, Kakarot reflected on how thoroughly circumstances had transformed not just their society but their individual approaches to existence. The rigid hierarchies and traditions that had once defined Saiyan life had been replaced by pragmatic adaptation and unlikely alliances. Whether these changes would prove sufficient against Frieza's overwhelming power remained uncertain. But the hidden strengths emerging among the survivors, both technical capabilities like their energy compression techniques and philosophical evolutions like their growing cooperation, suggested possibilities even Frieza might not have anticipated. As they entered the command center to oversee the reconnaissance mission briefing, Kakarot allowed himself momentary optimism. From the ashes of near extinction, something unprecedented was emerging, not merely resistance against tyranny, but perhaps a fundamentally new understanding of what their species could become. Chapter 3 End. The End. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.